Kai's armored rig keeps moving across the frozen wasteland when one of his companions asks him to make a short detour toward a nearby base and pick up her teenage son. Since she has served him for years, she argues that she cannot simply leave the boy behind. Kai appears to understand, but instead of changing course, he suddenly throws her off the moving rig and tells her to stay with her son. Realizing what just happened, she scrambles back to her feet and desperately runs after the vehicle. But by then the MC is already disappearing into the distance. With that problem behind him, he continues toward Duskmere. While the rig hides its true nature beneath the appearance of an ordinary vehicle, outside, the world is completely buried under ice and snow. The result of a catastrophe survivors now call the Great Freeze. Inside one hidden base, an announcement makes the shortages painfully clear. Each person receives only one compressed biscuit and 300 milliliters of purified water. 6 months have already passed since the endless winter began, yet nobody knows what caused it. Even so, the cold alone is not what brought civilization to its knees. The greater threat came from the calamity beasts. Snow-white monsters that appeared from nowhere and prey on humans. To survive, the remaining strongholds shelter behind towering armed walls that repel wave after wave of attacks. Anyone killed by these creatures can return as a thrall bound to them, so most survivors now have only 2 choices: hide inside scattered survival bases or cling to makeshift camps wherever they can. In those camps, everyone works simply to stay alive. When Jade is told to rest, she leaves the chores to the others and asks them to call if anything happens. Before long, while people hammer boards into place and tend the fire, someone spots a dark line moving across the distant snowfield. The whole camp rushes toward the fence, but the scout on the watchtower sees the danger first through his binoculars. A massive group of thralls is charging straight at them. Since these former humans can usually be dropped with a single bullet, the defenders open fire immediately. However, there are far too many to stop at range, and the swarm soon reaches the fence. With the barrier already straining, archers fire from behind while spearmen brace themselves and fight to hold the line. The defenders desperately call for support on the east side, but the pressure keeps building until the fence finally gives way beneath the sheer number of thralls. Once the barrier collapses, the creatures pour into the camp, and the northern defense line falls almost immediately. The scout sounds the alarm while residents rush indoors. Yet the thralls move too quickly. More sections of the fence collapse as people scatter, and anyone who cannot escape fast enough is torn apart. Even those hiding inside cabins can only listen to the screams outside until the monsters find them too. Before long, the camp is completely overrun, including the watchtower. The scout has nowhere left to flee and is bitten. But just as another thrall closes in, Jade Su arrives at full speed and swings her blade. With a single strike, Jade Su drops both thralls in front of her, and her arrival immediately gives the survivors a little hope. She launches herself into the swarm, spinning through the attackers and cutting down every creature that gets close. Even when one thrall nearly catches her from behind on the tower, she keeps moving, and the defenders rally around her. Archers cover the high ground while Jade carves a path through the chaos below, leaving every thrall she passes on the ground while some remaining almost spotless herself. Meanwhile, Kai's rig continues across the snow until Apex detects a human settlement roughly 7 kilometers to the southwest. The camp is under attack by calamity beasts, which initially sounds like just another disaster in a world where settlements are destroyed every day. That changes the moment Apex reveals that the camp sits directly above the starving ice mine, giving Kai a reason to intervene. While the rig changes course, a frightened man inside the settlement locks himself in his cabin, opens a hidden hatch, and crawls into an underground passage to hide. At first, he hopes the others survive, but his concern quickly turns selfish as he decides that only Jade Su matters, since she is attractive and strong enough to protect him. His smug thoughts vanish when he notices that the basement seems much longer than before. A pitch-black opening has appeared deep underground, and a pair of eyes slowly approaches from inside it. By the time he realizes what he is seeing, a calamity beast is already upon him, and his final scream ends in pure despair. Above ground, the situation becomes even worse. As the survivors continue fighting the thralls, cabin roofs suddenly burst apart and calamity beasts climb directly out of the houses. Nobody understands how the creatures reach such a remote camp, but everyone knows they are far more dangerous than ordinary thralls. Panic spreads instantly, and some survivors decide their only chance is to use the others as distractions and flee. Even Jade Su is forced to retreat because the beasts are simply too powerful to confront head-on. One man fires his gun in desperation, yet the moment a creature lunges at him, he abandons the fight and runs as well. The camp dissolves into chaos, with people scattering in every direction while the calamity beasts tear through the defenses. Before long, nearly everyone is running for their life. Just as Jade Su looks back, several brilliant beams cut across the battlefield and punch straight through the calamity beasts, shattering them on contact. The attacks come so quickly that nobody can understand what is happening. In reality, Kai is inside his transformed rig, casually controlling the pulse cannon as though he were playing a shooting game. To the survivors, he looks like a savior descending at the perfect moment, but for him the monsters are little more than targets. Whenever one blast is not enough, he simply fires again, and soon both calamity beasts and thralls are the ones trying to escape. Apex confirms that every hostile creature in the camp has been eliminated, although 17 humans were also caught in the crossfire. Kai barely reacts and drives the rig into the devastated settlement, where the stunned survivors can only stare at the machine. The survivors initially wonder whether a powerful figure from some major base has come to rescue them, but their relief quickly turns to caution when the armed rig stops nearby. Their leader thanks the newcomer and asks why he came, only for Kai to demand that everyone lower their weapons. Before discussing anything, several people react angrily, especially after seeing how indiscriminately the rig had been firing moments earlier. Apex immediately detects the surge of hostility, and Kai responds without hesitation by ordering the threatening individuals eliminated. The pulse cannon kills them in an instant, sending the rest of the camp into panic. Realizing resistance would only make things worse, the leader orders everyone to disarm. Once the weapons hit the ground, Kai finally relaxes the pressure and explains that Apex Base has not come to destroy them at all. He only wants to make a deal. Kai steps out of the rig, and the survivors are surprised by how young he looks despite the terrifying machine behind him. He explains that the land beneath their camp once belonged to one of his base's mines, which means the settlers are now sitting on a resource he wants extracted, rather than simply taking control. He offers them a trade they cannot realistically refuse: 5 kilograms of ore in exchange for 1 kilogram of rice. The promise of real food immediately changes the mood, and some survivors are ready to agree to almost anything. Kai then gives the camp leader a detailed map of the mine and marks the location where future exchanges will take place. He has already stocked that point with food and tools to get them started, leaving the leader almost speechless at how quickly the entire arrangement has been decided. Just as Kai is finishing the deal, Jade Su suddenly comes charging across the snow with her blade drawn. She attacks without warning, forcing him to dodge before managing to seize him as a hostage. Her group intends to take both the supplies and the rig, but Kai remains completely calm and points out that a single meal means little compared with receiving food every day through his trade. Some of the camp residents begin to hesitate, while Jade's allies assume the rig has exhausted its weapons and accuse Kai of bluffing. That confidence disappears when another laser blast instantly kills one of them. The survivors finally realize the vehicle is still being controlled from inside, even though nobody else appears to be there. Jade refuses to back down and keeps Kai at sword point, hoping she can use him to force the rig into submission. Kai reveals that the rig does not need another person inside because its AI can attack on its own. He also warns that if he fails to return within 30 minutes, the system will erase the entire camp. With no safe alternative, Jade forces him toward the vehicle while the others follow. They assume Kai is finally under control, but the AI suddenly fires again and wipes out the curious followers. Jade is confused but still gets Kai inside. The moment the doors close, her entire attitude changes. She drops the sword, embraces him warmly, and reveals the hostage situation was only an act. The two clearly know each other, and Jade is genuinely surprised to find Kai in such a remote place, once they are safely inside. Kai admits that Jade's performance nearly fooled him, while she points out that he was the one reckless enough to step outside an armed rig without worrying about an ambush. Kai dismisses the danger, confident that anyone who has tried such a thing before ended badly. The conversation then turns to why Jade is so far from home. She asks him to take her back to Duskmere and offers to have her father send professional miners to handle the starving deposit. Since her father now leads Duskmere base, arranging the manpower would be simple. Kai respects the offer but decides there is no need to trouble him, especially because he was already heading toward Duskmere himself. It is his hometown as well, and Jade's unexpected appearance gives him one more reason to return. Outside, the remaining survivors cannot understand how someone as capable as Jade could have been taken so easily, and her companions quickly distance themselves from her actions. Kai reassures them that the mining agreement still stands as long as they keep producing ore, but he also warns them not to get clever. To them, the raw mineral is almost worthless, only the exchange with him turns it into food and useful supplies. He plans to return in 2 months to inspect their progress. After the rig leaves, the camp leader discovers that Kai really did leave behind genuine rice, proving the deal was not a trick. Meanwhile, the vehicle transforms and races away at full speed. Jade is surprised by how much food Kai is willing to trade for low-yield ore, especially when Apex Base apparently has no shortage of supplies, and she begins wondering how much influence he actually holds there. Jade decides not to pry into Kai's position and asks how long he plans to stay in Duskmere. His answer depends on what happens there, though he admits he may need her help. Jade considers that unnecessary formality after he just saved her life. She then asks to use the rig's shower, something she has not enjoyed properly in a long time. Kai gives her a clean robe and lets her relax while Apex quietly reports that Jade's threat level remains at 0. The AI notices something else about her, but Kai sees no reason to continue monitoring someone with no hostile intent. Back at the camp, the survivors finally eat warm rice porridge and savor every bite. Back at the camp, the survivors are so grateful for the porridge that some joke they would treat Kai like family if he kept feeding them this well. Their attitude is a sharp reversal from the day before when they called him a thug. Their gossip soon turns to Jade, whom they assume was taken away and is now suffering. In reality, she is living far better than any of them inside the rig. Once she settles down, Kai asks why she had been so far from Duskmere. Jade explains that she was leading a mission when her team encountered a king-tier calamity beast inside a grain depot. They fired an RPG at it and initially believed the explosion had killed the creature. The relief lasts only a moment. The beast screams from the smoke, bursts forward, and strikes Jade hard enough to send her into a wall. When the team realizes even an RPG cannot kill it, everyone scatters. Jade slips through an opening and escapes, only to find their vehicles destroyed outside. With no transport left, she later joins a moving survivor camp by trading a box of antibiotics for shelter. Meeting Kai may have saved her weeks of uncertainty. He is shocked her father allowed such a dangerous mission, but Jade explains nobody expected a king-tier beast to be waiting inside. The assignment had seemed routine for the season. Since this period would once have been summer, the mission to move stored grain had seemed completely reasonable. Kai offers Jade some coffee. But when she does not answer, he turns around and finds her already asleep on the couch, amused that she had just criticized him for being careless. He prepares his own bed and quickly falls asleep as well. During the night, old memories surface in a vivid dream. He recalls trying to calm rumors while a crowd of Jade's admirers refused to leave him alone, only for a glowing object to suddenly fall from the sky. Before Kai could react, a beam of light entered his body and flooded him with overwhelming energy. Along with it came visions of the future, calamity beasts everywhere, humanity collapsing, and the entire world buried beneath ice. He also remembers people arguing desperately over what might become their last safe haven. The dream shifts when Kai hears the name Apex, and his thoughts fill with static. A purple-haired girl in futuristic clothing appears before him, even though nobody nearby seems able to see her. Kai reaches out to test whether she is real. The sensation feels strangely soft, but in reality he is pinching Jade's cheek in his sleep. She wakes and pulls him out of the dream. At the same time, the morning immediately becomes awkward as they try to understand how she ended up so close to him during the night. Neither had been drinking, which only makes the situation stranger. Kai jokes about it briefly before they realize Duskmere is already approaching. As the rig closes in on Duskmere, Kai teases Jade about paying for the ride, and she suddenly becomes far shyer than she had been during the journey. The vehicle is fast enough that they reach the city. Before long, Jade is relieved to be home, but she warns Kai not to drive such an eye-catching machine directly into the base, which now occupies the city's old second ring. He agrees, while she quietly wonders how much the place has changed and whether her father has already assumed she is dead. They do not plan to walk the rest of the way either. At Duskmere's outer perimeter, floodlights, radar, and weapons operate around the clock, while officers monitor reports of yet another base destroyed by calamity beasts. Meanwhile, Jade races toward the base in a luxury sports car with Kai beside her, easily staying ahead of the pack of thralls chasing them. Jade reveals the sports car is not an emergency stash at all, but a vehicle she owned before the apocalypse, and can now only use during the warmer part of the year. She drives Kai to Duskmere base, where the guards recognize her and react with shock because everyone believed she was gone. One warns that she may already be in trouble and should report to Commander Su. Once inside, news of her return spreads immediately. Residents whisper about Miss Su being alive and speculate About the unfamiliar young man beside her, Jade ignores the gossip. Most ordinary residents no longer live inside the fortified base anyway, having been moved into nearby apartment blocks. Where patrols can still protect them, residents living closer to the base are safer because patrol teams regularly check the surrounding neighborhoods. As Jade and Kai continue inside, an excited man rushes over and says how worried he has been. The moment he notices Kai, his expression turns hostile. Jade dismisses him with a cutting joke, and the confrontation ends with the man unconscious after Kai admits he may have hit too hard. She is unconcerned as long as he is breathing. Jade explains that he is the son of the base's former deputy chief and someone she never took seriously. Kai's irritation, however, comes less from jealousy than from the bad memories the man brings back. Those memories come from years of rumors claiming Kai and Jade were more than friends. Ever since that gossip began, Kai remembers being harassed constantly, whether he was in class, resting, or simply trying to play games in peace. Even a normal gaming session could be interrupted by people obsessed with Jade, and he still resents whoever first spread the story. When Jade asks who started it, Kai suddenly becomes much less eager to talk, and the two hurry on. Meanwhile, Commander Su is working in his office when Jade finally walks through the door with Kai. Her father is overwhelmed with relief and can barely believe she is alive. Jade jokes that he could never dream of something this fortunate, while Apex quietly reports another detail to Kai. The red-haired man they encountered earlier had reached a dangerously high threat level, though the hostility appeared to be directed almost entirely at Jade rather than at Kai. Apex estimates with near certainty that the earlier hostility was genuine aggression toward Jade rather than affection, which only makes Kai more curious. Even so, he tells the AI to stop spending star points unnecessarily because something more important is developing. Commander Su, meanwhile, wonders why Kai disappeared from the conversation so quickly and notes that Jade rarely pays much attention to him. That thought reminds him of another arrival. Mimi has recently reached Duskmere base. Jade is delighted at first because she has not seen Mimi in a long time, but the mood changes when her father explains that Mimi may be the sole survivor of Aurora base. The stronghold was destroyed by a calamity beast, and investigators are still piecing together what happened, according to Mimi's testimony. However, the force that actually destroyed the base may not have been a beast at all. The description points instead toward a human attacker. The revelation triggers Mimi's memories of the day Aurora base fell. She remembers a man who barely seemed human as he tore through the entire stronghold with terrifying ease, and the hatred has never left her. The instant she recognizes Kai, she attacks him with a blade and calls him a monster. He twists the weapon away and turns it back on her before Jade can intervene. When Jade arrives, she finds Mimi bleeding on the floor and Kai holding the blood-stained blade, making the scene look terrible at first glance. Kai insists he only tried to help Mimi after she attacked him without warning. But Mimi immediately accuses him of using that moment to grope her. The lie catches Jade off guard and leaves Kai furious, because the accusation completely reverses what actually happened and makes him look like the aggressor. Jade decides Mimi needs medical treatment before anything else, but Kai's anger gets the better of him and he roughly pulls the injured woman up from behind. Jade stops him before the situation becomes even worse, just as security units arrive in response to the reported violence. When the guards question Jade, she takes responsibility for the injury and argues that self-defense should still be allowed inside the base. The officers refuse to ignore procedure, so they move Mimi toward the medical wing and place Kai in an interrogation room until the incident can be sorted out. Jade asks him not to make things harder and promises to handle the matter herself. But the guards insist even she cannot override base law. The tension rises again when Jade warns them that Kai represents Apex base, forcing everyone nearby to reconsider whether detaining him could turn a personal dispute into a conflict between two bases. The guards are not impressed by Kai's outside status and insist that anyone who breaks Duskmere's rules must still follow procedure. Some even seem eager to teach him a lesson. But the argument is abruptly cut short by a calamity beast alert. Combat personnel are ordered towards Sector A. The base announces that its gates will close in 5 minutes, and civilians rush inside while tanks deploy to meet the incoming wave. Kai dryly notes that Duskmere has not exactly made him feel welcome. Jade tries to explain that the situation with Mimi must be a misunderstanding and asks him to come with her first, yet the emergency leaves her unable to resolve anything. At that moment, Kai's rig arrives on its own, allowing him to jump aboard and leave. He looks back once at the base preparing for siege, then decides its problems are no longer his concern. Duskmere's gates close behind him while Jade is ordered to remain inside under her father's instructions. Furious, she tries to push past the guards But they have already delivered the order and refuse to let her follow Kai. Outside the walls, the situation deteriorates almost immediately. Residents who failed to enter the base are told to abandon open streets and find the nearest shelter, while enormous numbers of calamity beasts rush toward the defensive perimeter. The base opens fire. But the attackers are too fast and too numerous. Gun emplacements are destroyed within seconds, communication with entire squads disappears, and soldiers realize this wave is far larger than expected. Worse, elite calamity beasts are mixed among the ordinary creatures, making every breach more dangerous. What first looked like another routine attack is rapidly turning into a battle capable of overwhelming the outer defenses. The fighting becomes brutal enough that even aircraft cannot operate safely. When a beast leaps into a helicopter's path, the rotor tears it apart, but the impact sends the aircraft out of control. Command quickly orders the outer defense line abandoned and pulls surviving troops back toward the inner ring. That decision leaves nearly 1 million civilians in the outer district exposed, yet Commander Su cannot afford to keep sacrificing trained soldiers. He orders residents to shelter separately and avoid gathering in crowds, since calamity beasts are drawn most strongly to dense groups of people. Even sustained suppressive fire cannot fully stop the advance, and this is only the first wave. Then elite beasts appear among the attackers. As snipers prepare to engage, they spot Jade Su fighting on the battlefield herself. Her strength shocks newer soldiers, but veterans know her compatibility with the hyperdimensional sequence factor exceeds 90%. That extraordinary compatibility allowed Jade to awaken her sequence gene. Years earlier with Dr. Yao's help, explaining why her physical abilities are so far beyond normal human limits. Even so, the soldiers watching her suspect. She is fighting with unusual aggression because she is still angry about Kai leaving. While Duskmere struggles against the invasion, Kai's rig continues quietly through the snow toward a different destination. A nearby explosion frightens a little girl, but her mother calms her as Kai approaches an iron gate carrying a black plastic bag. It has been a long time since he came home. Instead of entering a house, he kneels beside a small grave to pay his respects, where familiar faces eventually recognize him. Back at the base, missile strikes finally push the calamity beasts back enough for humanity to counterattack. Command announces the mop-up phase, warning that even one hidden survivor could cause another disaster as thermal scans reveal beasts still moving through dark buildings. A rescue truck suddenly appears at the worst possible moment, packed with people who have already turned into thralls. The soldiers realize the passengers never escaped in time, then open a ventilation shaft and throw grenades into the underground shelter below. A faint cry for help makes one rookie hesitate, but a veteran tells him there are no humans left to save. The hardest part is watching former comrades become monsters and still having to pull the trigger once the operation ends. The red alert finally falls silent, leaving the battlefield eerily still. Duskmere has survived, but its outer defense line has been breached for the first time, meaning casualties are likely severe. Commander Su cannot shake a growing sense that something is wrong, and that instinct proves correct when the Frontier Enforcers suddenly arrive carrying an official warrant. The Frontier Enforcers present Commander Su with a warrant from higher command, and he immediately realizes someone has set him up. Elsewhere, Jade Su is still clearing the last calamity beasts when Whis approaches and questions why she is outside despite orders to remain in the base. He claims he only wants to escort her back, but Jade notices something is wrong. Although she does not yet know how deeply he resents her, she stops expecting any help and prepares for betrayal. The moment she senses movement behind her, she turns and swings first. Whis takes the strike directly and is badly wounded, giving Jade the opening she needs to escape before the group can surround her. Jade uses the confusion to flee, while the men behind her decide capturing her alive is no longer worth the risk. Under the starlit sky, Kai is meanwhile visiting the Duskmere orphanage, where only Autumn and one other familiar face remain. They are overjoyed to see him back, but Kai admits he cannot stay long and promises to get them settled safely inside the base before he leaves again. Nearby, Jade is moving through the night with injuries while soldiers search for her. She dodges one patrol after another until fresh footprints reveal her route. As the hunters close in, Kai is still discussing his life at Apex Base when a sudden noise draws everyone's attention toward the door. Jade has already reached the orphanage and left a bag outside. Kai opens it and finds several papers along with a note warning that something has happened inside Duskmere Base and telling him to leave the city as soon as possible. Jade had considered asking him to use the rig but decided she could not drag him into her problems. Before she can disappear, Kai catches her sneaking near the door. In the middle of the night, the pressure finally breaks her composure and she starts crying. Her injuries are serious enough that one hand could have been permanently Damaged without treatment, once Kai stabilizes her condition, he asks why her own people are hunting her. Jade explains that someone saw her return alive and finally decided to act. Jade traces the conspiracy to Officer Yan, of Frontier Command, Jay's uncle, who has wanted control of Duskmere Base for years. He once used his influence to install his own brother as deputy chief, and gradually built a faction inside the base. Commander Su kept that group contained until two recent incidents gave Yan the excuse he needed. First, Jay's father died mysteriously inside the base and the killer was never found. Then came Jade's failed grain mission. As she returned, her father warned that rumors were already spreading, accusing him of sending the team out to hoard grain for himself because so many people had left and none had come back. The missing grain gives Officer Yan exactly the kind of justification he needs, because arresting a base commander becomes much easier when higher command already doubts the leadership. Jade apologizes that her earlier promise to help Kai move his family into Duskmere may no longer be possible. Back at the base, several high-ranking men arrive by helicopter, clearly connected to the scheme. Whis and Jay notice the commotion, and Jay immediately rushes to greet his uncle. The reunion is nothing like he expects. The older man is furious at his nephew's disgrace, kicks him aside, and marches past without concern for his injuries, because his priority is confronting Commander Su. While that power struggle unfolds, Kai's group enjoys an almost absurdly peaceful meal inside the rig, grilling meat while the frozen apocalypse continues outside. Jade wakes to the smell of food and joins them, joking that she should not have to pay another fare just to eat. Her wounded hand has already healed far faster than she thought possible, which makes her increasingly curious about Apex Base and the medicine Kai carries. He refuses to reveal anything important and jokes that although he would welcome harmless company, he has no intention of being dragged into dangerous secrets. For a moment, the group simply eats together in silence, as snow falls beyond the windows. Later, Jade wakes to find herself curled up against Kai, and quietly pulls away, too embarrassed to wake him. She leaves through the snow, glancing back several times before finally walking off alone. Kai had been awake but lets her go. Elsewhere, soldiers complain about the extreme lockdown imposed just to capture one woman. 9 men have already died in the operation, and some resent paying for someone else's political struggle. That frustration proves dangerous when one man jokes that 10 casualties would sound cleaner than 9. The remark is followed by sudden violence, revealing that the people enforcing the hunt are willing to kill their own side without hesitation. A soldier's neck is snapped before the squad can even react, proving how far beyond normal speed the attacker is. Panic spreads as gunfire fails to stop him. Kai forces his way through the defensive line with almost no effort, convinced that this level of security cannot be only about Jade. Once he reaches the orphanage, he asks whether the remaining residents truly intend to stay. They admit it is difficult to abandon the place, especially now that the supplies he left could last for years. Kai accepts their choice and eventually leaves Duskmere alone again. The rig races across the snow until he returns to the remote mining camp he saved earlier, where the familiar white vehicle immediately sends the residents into a nervous uproar. The camp reacts to Kai's return with equal parts fear and gratitude. Some still see him as a walking disaster, while others now treat him like a benefactor because of the food he provided. Kai asks how much ore they have mined and quickly realizes almost no progress has been made, even though the equipment he supplied could have cleared the shallow layer in days. The chief scrambles to promise immediate action. Kai reminds him that reducing the workforce is not always a loss, especially because the map he provided clearly warned about lethal radiation in the ore. As Kai prepares to return to the rig, several residents suddenly become eager to accompany and serve him, turning the tense inspection into an awkward competition for his attention. The camp chief tries to impress Kai by calling over Marina, the strongest woman in the settlement, but Kai politely declines and tells him to keep her for himself. Elsewhere, Mimi is moving through a dark corridor when Jade suddenly drops down beside her and urgently asks to be taken somewhere private. Mimi agrees, yet secretly presses a button on a remote while Jade is not looking. As they move deeper inside, Jade mentions that the serious injury she suffered earlier now barely hurts, something she finds strange given how badly she was wounded. Before they can investigate further, a blonde-haired woman suddenly charges at them with a blade drawn, forcing Jade to push Mimi aside and meet The attack herself. Jade intercepts the attacker just in time, but the blonde woman is clearly stronger and drives her blade straight toward Jade's throat. At the same time, Kai's war rig is racing across the snow, crushing or throwing aside the thralls chasing behind it. He is finally heading back toward camp after a week away. And his passenger admits the last few days have been the happiest since the apocalypse began. Kai then asks where she originally encountered Jade during the migration. She cannot remember the exact spot, only that it was not far from camp. Given the rig's speed, Kai decides the location should be nearby and turns toward it to collect anything useful. Meanwhile, back at Duskmere base, Commander Su is being pressured to surrender Dr. Yao's legacy in exchange for having old accusations dropped. Commander Su insists he never killed Yan's brother and tries to redirect attention toward the recent Calamity Beast attack, which he suspects may have been deliberately controlled. His enemies refuse to be distracted and threaten to act despite the protection he once received from Lu Shusho. Meanwhile, Jade and Scarlet are both restrained, giving the conspirators complete leverage over the Su family and shifting the balance of power inside Duskmere. Jade is mocked for still being stuck at the coalescence stage despite her 90% sequence compatibility. While the group demands to know where the sequence serum is hidden, Commander Su claims he knows nothing about any serum but eventually agrees to lead them into the final room of Dr. Yao's research laboratory because Jade's safety leaves him little choice. He had promised never to open the room, yet protecting his daughter now matters more than that promise. Commander Su unlocks the sealed door and leads everyone into the laboratory, warning that the security may include dangerous fail-safes. Inside, he retrieves a file containing Dr. Yao's research, including pages written in symbols the others cannot understand. Before anyone can study them properly, a gunshot suddenly rings out. The white-haired man leading the operation decides Yan has become useless and shoots him dead without hesitation. Scarlet reacts with fury and attacks immediately, but the man meets her blade with his bare hands and somehow holds her off. He even catches the weapon between both palms while airborne, proving that his strength is far beyond what the others expected. The sudden execution turns an already tense standoff into open violence, while Jade rushes toward her wounded father. Jade helps Commander Su to his feet and tries to get him away while Scarlet continues attacking the white-haired man. Her strikes are casually blocked with one hand, as though he can unravel every technique she uses. Jade then arrives carrying an RPG and fires directly at the man, forcing Scarlet to leap clear before the explosion fills the corridor with smoke. With the laboratory at risk of collapsing, both Jay and Scarlet retreat rather than stay trapped inside. At that same time, Kai reaches the cave where Jade previously encountered the King-tier Calamity Beast. The wrecked vehicle is still buried in the snow outside, and Kai walks in without urgency, because Jade's description suggests the creature should be only around the human confluence level. Kai knows King-tier Calamity Beasts vary greatly in strength, but based on Jade's account, this one should not pose much danger to him. After searching the cave and finding no sign of it, he decides the absence is actually convenient. The abandoned grain and other supplies are still stored inside, so he uses the pressure anchor ring to lift everything at once and claim it. He is mildly frustrated by how slowly the ring extends and retracts, since without that limitation it could be a powerful combat tool. Even though he fails to find the beast he came for, the enormous stockpile makes the trip worthwhile. With the resources secured, Kai concludes that Duskmere City and its base no longer offer him much strategic value, then turns the rig back toward camp. When Kai returns, he finds the camp chief surrounded by angry residents demanding compensation for miners who died from radiation exposure. The chief insists he deliberately sent down people with no family or those who constantly caused trouble. Yet now everyone suddenly claims to be related to the dead. One woman even demands payment for a supposed husband, only for others to expose how often she changes partners and how she previously tried to seduce them as well. Kai has no patience for the argument and ends the squabbling with a cold display of force, making it clear he does not owe anyone an explanation. Once the crowd falls silent, his attention shifts to a more important question: why Jay has appeared there at all. Jay reveals that he has been using his technical skills to monitor nearly every corner of Duskmere base, which allowed him to see the political struggle unfolding from the shadows. Kai is unimpressed, pointing out that the path had already been prepared for him and he still took too long to act. Jay counters that the deception worked only because someone inside the base had been told to ignore suspicious activity. Before the conversation can go further, another red alert sounds. Kai drives the rig directly into the mine where it crushes and absorbs the ore to replenish its energy. While he watches the vehicle recharge, his phone suddenly rings. Only Autumn has one of his Star Anchor phones and he has barely been gone. So the call immediately worries him. Her frightened voice confirms the problem. Enormous numbers of monsters are attacking the residential blocks around Duskmere again. Only days after the previous assault, calamity beasts strike Duskmere in overwhelming numbers once more. This time, evolved flying creatures join the attack and climb across apartment towers, trapping terrified civilians inside. Families hide in silence because being noticed would mean certain death, and some parents sacrifice themselves just to buy their children a few more seconds. The beasts gather beneath one larger flying creature that roars as though issuing commands, raising fears that the rumored King Tier beast is directing the entire assault. Duskmere scrambles its defenses, but enemies are also emerging through the sewer system. Steel barriers meant to stop them are torn apart with a single bite, allowing the creatures to flood directly into populated areas. The base responds by deploying tanks. And ordinary calamity beasts are cut down under sustained heavy fire. The King Tier creature, however, is on a completely different level. One swipe destroys a tank, while a single stomp can kill anyone caught beneath it. Soldiers and civilians begin questioning whether the new command structure can handle the crisis. And many openly wish Commander Su were still in charge. Their wish is answered when he is finally released from suspicion and told to take over the defense. Officer Yan is already dead, killed by his own side, and Commander Su is handed 50 vials of sequence serum. He is instructed to give them only to people he trusts because anyone who successfully fuses with the serum will advance directly to coalescence. Kai explains that the people receiving the sequence serum will have work to do afterward, and one volunteer accepts the risk even after learning failure could mean death. She would rather gamble on becoming stronger than ever. Feel helpless before disaster again, Kai prepares her for the procedure and hopes the fusion succeeds. Meanwhile, Duskmere base is collapsing from within. Mimi suddenly transforms into a calamity beast inside the armory and kills a soldier before anyone understands what is happening. Civilians run through the corridors as newly created thralls attack from multiple directions. One survivor barely manages to slam a door shut before the creatures break through, trapping terrified people inside, while Commander Su receives the alarming report that enemies have appeared throughout the base. Thralls are now appearing across Duskmere, throwing the shelter tower into chaos. Commander Su sends people to investigate while civilians desperately hold a reinforced door that is already cracking. The barrier finally gives way, but Jade arrives just in time and cuts through the attackers before the crowd is overwhelmed. After clearing Sector E, she reports that no calamity beast has been found nearby, which makes the outbreak even stranger because thralls cannot normally spread infection by themselves. Surveillance teams begin searching for the missing cause and soon discover something impossible. Mamie, now fully transformed, is feeding on a fallen soldier. Her presence inside the base finally explains where at least part of the outbreak began. With Duskmere already in chaos, Command decides to draw the King Tier beast toward a prepared kill zone. Squads retreat to the inner ring, a flare is launched, and heavy weapons wait for the creature to take the bait. Elsewhere, Kai finishes organizing his own people. One volunteer asks him to protect her family if the mission goes badly, and Kai accepts the responsibility. Impressed by their courage, he formally recognizes the group as an auxiliary unit of Apex Base and sends them on the task. As they drive toward Duskmere, the travelers begin talking about Jade, remembering that she once saved one of them. The conversation becomes awkward when someone uses an unexpectedly familiar name for her, leaving the others wondering whether they are being teased. After assigning the mission, Kai summons the war rig and activates an energy shield around it, planning to move on once his remaining preparations are complete. Back at Duskmere, the flare succeeds in drawing the King Tier beast into the open. Every weapon turns toward it, yet the creature dodges most shots and shrugs off direct hits. As though its body were solid steel, one swipe destroys a turret while ordinary beasts surge forward beneath it. Soldiers pour out suppressive fire to keep them from reaching the base, and Jade continues cutting down thralls on the ground. Then surveillance finally traces the infection source. The answer shocks Jade into silence, even as the King Tier beast continues tearing through the battlefield like a living weapon. The King Tier beast survives barrage after barrage until a high-speed armor-piercing round finally catches it during a brief pause. The impact creates an opening, and every nearby gun concentrates fire on the same target. For the first time, the creature is visibly hurt, sending morale surging through the defenders. Under the relentless bombardment, it eventually collapses and the soldiers erupt in celebration. Their relief lasts only seconds. A pink blur tears through the formation and kills several men before anyone can aim properly. The attacker is Mimi. In her transformed state, moving so quickly that bullets barely touch her, Jade cuts into the fight and intercepts her former friend, turning the battlefield into a direct confrontation between the two women. Mimi's transformation has pushed her physical abilities high enough that even Jade struggles to keep pace. They exchange several attacks without either gaining a clear advantage, but Jade hesitates when she realizes she may have to kill her own friend. That emotional strain triggers another change inside her body. Her cells shift, her power surges, and the next slash cuts cleanly across Mimi's chest. As Mimi weakens, the truth behind the incident begins to emerge. Someone has been using people as test subjects and amplifying their negative emotions until they mutate. Mimi's long-buried jealousy and resentment toward Jade are forced to the surface, revealing how deeply she hated seeing her friends survive, grow stronger, and remain close to Kai. Only when death is close does Mimi realize those thoughts no longer feel like her own. By then, however, there is no time left to apologize for what has happened. Meanwhile, Kai's rig finishes absorbing energy from the ore and reaches a full charge. He starts the engine and immediately notices how much faster the vehicle has become as it tears across the snow toward Duskmere. The base is still fighting enormous numbers of calamity beasts even after the King Tier monster falls. Scarlet cuts down one elite beast, while Jade handles ordinary creatures with single strikes. Against an elite target, though, Jade's weapon finally reaches its limit and snaps the instant her blade connects, leaving her exposed as the beast lunges. An arrow suddenly punches through the elite beast before it can reach Jade. She looks up and sees an off-roader emerging from the snow, carrying familiar survivors from the camp. They have come specifically to help her, and the reunion brings a rare moment of relief in the middle of the battle. After dealing with the immediate threat, the group explains that they are heading toward the Duskmere orphanage and invites Jade along. She instead asks Autumn and the others to remain safely inside the base once they arrive, because they are among the few people Kai still cares about deeply. The convoy then pushes forward, working together to eliminate every beast that attacks the vehicle on the way. The group proves far more capable than expected, even killing a beast that manages to leap onto the moving off-roader. By the time they reach the outskirts of Duskmere, the streets are eerily silent. The damaged gate makes it obvious the base has been attacked again. Despite reports that the King Tier beast was already killed, Jade cannot explain what happened, and the answer becomes even more disturbing when elite calamity beasts emerge through the entrance. At the same moment, Kai's war rig detects an abnormal confluence-level gene resonance and changes course on its own. Apex confirms the signal is not coming from a beast. The frequency belongs to someone aligned with their side, giving Kai an urgent reason to push directly toward the base. Inside Duskmere, Commander Su struggles to his feet in a command room covered with the bodies of soldiers and beasts. Someone has clearly sabotaged the base's defenses from within. Outside, Jade and her allies continue clearing the creatures pouring through the area. Her newly awakened power is obvious now. She moves with far greater speed, avoids ambushes almost effortlessly, and kills beasts with single strikes. The others are weaker but still manage to hold their ground until reinforcements arrive. Autumn's group fights its way toward the shelter, using coordinated attacks to keep the beasts off the vehicle. They finally make it inside only to discover another problem immediately. The shelter door appears to have been left unsecured. Jade and the others break into a run, only for Scarlet to crash through a wall in front of them, already badly wounded. The white-haired man follows and nearly chokes her to death before an arrow forces him to release her. He catches the projectile with one hand, tosses Scarlet aside, and turns his attention to Jade. He immediately notices that she has already reached attunement and mocks the base for producing talented fighters who are still trapped like caged birds. Jade realizes he is responsible for the devastation around them and attacks, but he moves behind the group in an instant. One kick sends a fighter flying, and even Jade's blade is stopped by his bare fist before an elbow knocks her back. Within moments, everyone is injured while the white-haired man remains untouched, revealing how much strength he has been hiding. Just as he steps forward to finish them, countless laser cannons lock onto him and begin firing without pause. He dodges quickly, but the barrage drives him straight into Kai's path. One punch sends the supposedly unstoppable fighter flying. Kai is already irritated by how much trouble outsiders have caused since arriving in Duskmere, while the man is stunned that someone here knows anything about the outside world. He demands answers, but Kai instead asks how many others came with him. The stranger refuses to cooperate and attacks at full speed, yet Kai blocks every strike without giving ground. Kai throws the man backward with a single motion, but the stranger keeps attacking and is smashed into a wall by another palm strike. Jade and Scarlet can only stare as a confluence-level fighter fails to land even one meaningful blow. They finally realize this is not a real contest at all, just a one-sided beating. Kai even compares the man unfavorably with the blonde outsider he encountered at Aurora Base. That name provokes a violent reaction, the stranger realizes. Kai may have been responsible for what happened to Tifa and charges in rage, only to be grabbed by the leg and slammed into the ground. His final punch is stopped between two of Kai's fingers, leaving the others speechless at how completely the once terrifying opponent has been reduced to a toy. When the black-haired archer regains consciousness, Kai deliberately provokes the defeated man. Further, by revealing that the blonde fighter once offered himself up in exchange for survival, only to be killed anyway. The insult sends the stranger into uncontrollable fury. Horns and scales emerge across his body as he abandons his human appearance and transforms. Jade, Scarlet, and the archer freeze at the sight. But Kai remains calm. Even after the transformation boosts the man's speed and strength enough to tear Kai's shirt with a punch, he still cannot gain control of the fight. Kai gathers energy into his palm and releases a concentrated wave directly into the transformed attacker, overwhelming the power he had just gained. The blast punches through the stranger's heart and kills him instantly, leaving everyone nearby stunned. What Kai just displayed is recognized as the sign of a sequence break. The ability to externalize matter and energy. According to the Nexus's latest records, only the capital's Valkyrie is known to have reached that level. Jade reacts emotionally and rushes toward Kai, but his combat reflexes make him dodge before realizing what she intended, sending her tumbling to the ground. Scarlet checks the corpse and is equally shaken by the realization that a void break-level being has been hiding in Duskmere City. Whatever connection exists between Kai and Jade will now be almost impossible to keep secret, especially because soldiers inside the building witnessed the entire fight. The monitoring room is full of soldiers trying to process what they saw. One boasts that he once crossed paths with Kai, only to be mocked for thinking someone that powerful would even remember him. With the last Calamity Beasts finally eliminated, the base shifts from survival to recovery. Returning cleanup squads contain the remaining threats outside, while engineers begin assessing the enormous damage caused by two disasters in quick succession. Watchtowers remain on constant alert in case another attack follows. Before leaving, Kai hands over important intelligence for Commander Su and warns Jade to keep her 90% sequence compatibility as quiet as possible. If the wrong people learn how quickly she is advancing, they may interfere before she has a chance to grow stronger. Jade already understands the danger, but her attention is focused on something else. Kai is preparing to leave. He still has the mission associated with Apex Base to complete. Even though Jade has begun to suspect the organization may not exist in the way he claims, she decides the truth no longer matters. The person standing before her is now so far ahead that she cannot walk beside him as an equal, but she promises to keep training until the next time they meet. Kai is genuinely touched by her determination. Later, while he rests, Apex interrupts with an incoming hollow call from Luna. Jade stirs awake as well, and Kai answers to find the capital's Valkyrie greeting him after a long absence. Luna has no sympathy for being woken early and immediately gets to business. She knows Kai is in Duskmere and has heard about the outsiders he recently dealt with, warning that if nobody acts, small infiltrations will become much larger problems. She proposes exchanging missions. Kai will scout Albion Isle, where a local faction is cooperating with outsiders and Luna's face is too recognizable for covert work. In return, she will deal with an old man in Zealandia on Kai's behalf. He accepts the arrangement and prepares to leave Duskmere. Jade offers one last chance to say goodbye to her father and the others. But Kai avoids sentimental farewells. He only asks her to take care of Autumn and the rest before climbing back into the war rig and starting the engine. Jade stands in the snow watching the rig disappear, fighting back tears even though she knows she has to let Kai go. Life continues behind him. The mining camp proudly hangs a new sign declaring itself an Apex Base branch outpost, only for the sign to fall apart immediately and send everyone into laughter. In Duskmere, Jay and Whis part ways. Commander Su and Jade share their own farewell, and Scarlet watches the emotional scene from nearby. Far away at the border, Luna completes her assignment almost effortlessly, flattening an entire group of beasts with a single shockwave. Meanwhile, Kai drives across frozen plains, mountains, and rivers. The Duskmere chapter is over for now, and his journey turns towards Sakura Isle, where an entirely new set of problems is waiting. After crossing the frozen sea back onto solid ground, Kai loads the local language module and soon finds himself confronting people who try to ambush him. One frightened woman begs for mercy and offers anything if he lets them go, but Kai has little patience for attackers suddenly asking for kindness. Instead, he questions whether she is local and drops a sun-marked token in front of her. The instant she sees it, her face loses all color. She denies knowing anything. But Apex detects the lie immediately. Kai makes it clear that honesty is now her only chance of surviving. Under pressure, the woman finally admits that she does not know the symbol's true origin, only that whenever it appears in someone's home, something bad usually follows. The woman finally explains that families marked with the strange symbol often lose someone the very next day, and those who vanish are later rumored to return as monsters hunting their own relatives. She has even heard of the same pattern in the eastern capital. Once Kai has extracted everything useful, he releases her without offering a ride and throws the frozen body of her companion down as well. The woman immediately finds herself surrounded by beasts and tries to distract them with the corpse, but she is dragged back before escaping. Kai's rig easily outruns the creatures chasing it, although the long drive begins to feel monotonous. Wanting to stretch his legs, he eventually stops and steps outside to deal with a few monsters personally. Kai treats the nearby calamity beasts like exercise equipment, dropping them one punch at a time. From a distance, a girl watches through binoculars and becomes convinced he is the lord she has been searching for. A black-haired man with striking eyes beside a silver rig. Her confidence is impressive considering the only reference she has is a crude drawing on a scroll. Elsewhere, a man waits impatiently in the freezing weather, wondering why someone has not arrived yet. Kai's war rig continues smashing through broken ice while unseen. Observers track its movement. Across the frozen fields, shapes gather in the distance, suggesting that several different groups are now converging on the same route. As the rig moves deeper across the ice, strange energy flickers through the sky and distant shadows appear and vanish around it. The landscape feels increasingly unnatural, with hidden movement beneath the ice and silhouettes forming near shattered walls. Fragments of old memories seem to surface and fade as Kai keeps driving. But none are enough to distract him from the road ahead. Two flashes of light collide in the white distance, and a massive obstruction briefly blocks the route before disappearing almost as quickly. As it appeared, beneath the frozen surface, dark currents continue to churn. Then several shadows rise around the perimeter, and an enormous ancient-looking silhouette finally emerges. Beyond the last wall of ice, blotting out the light above, Kai keeps moving through the frozen landscape until a girl suddenly races toward the rig and enthusiastically calls him her lord. Apex detects no hostile intent, and Kai initially wonders whether Luna arranged the meeting. The stranger introduces herself as Hyemno Frost, eldest daughter of House Frost, and insists she was sent specifically to serve him. Kai has no idea what she means until Hyemno recalls her father's instructions. He had told her that a powerful and handsome man in a silver rig would arrive at the Seven Rivers Way station 10 days later, and that she should follow him from then on. When Hyemno asked for a photograph, her father's broken phone forced him to draw the man instead, producing the crude sketch she has been carrying ever since. Hyemno proudly shows Kai the drawing and somehow considers it a perfect likeness. Apex confirms she is telling the truth. So despite how absurd the situation is, Kai decides not to send her away. At the very least, someone this loyal may prove useful. Hyemno is immediately amazed by the warmth inside the rig, especially because she has spent years training herself to tolerate the cold. With minimal clothing, she has also been searching for Kai for several days and has already eaten through her rations. When he asks whether she can cook, she treats the question like a test of her worth and rushes to the stocked kitchen. In almost no time, she produces a full table of food and eats enthusiastically, while Kai takes one look at the result and quietly decides instant meals are safer. Elsewhere, survivors in a small town barely manage to kill a calamity beast with the last of their ammunition, then begin repairing the vehicle's damage during the fight. Their relief is short-lived because they know another attack could leave them defenseless. That night, the streetlights suddenly fail, drawing attention toward the generator. A terrified woman sits nearby, staring at a small familiar object on the ground. The following day, Hymno rides her snowmobile into another damaged town while following Kai's investigation. The wreckage makes it obvious a beast attacked recently. She approaches the nearest residents to ask questions, but the moment they notice what she is carrying, they panic and run away before she can explain herself. After several failed attempts, Hymno calls Kai and asks why everyone seems terrified of her. He points out that charging straight at strangers with blunt questions is hardly reassuring and advises her to win people over with sincerity. The advice sounds noble until the scene cuts to Kai himself, who is currently pinning a man down and beating information out of him. Hymno takes the contradiction as proof of her lord's wisdom and copies his method exactly. She corners another man and asks whether the strain token has appeared in anyone's home nearby. His bizarre reaction disgusts her, so she kicks him harder until he finally gives a useful answer. The same thing happened recently in the neighboring town. Hymno races toward the neighboring settlement before night fully falls, but armed locals surround her the moment she arrives. They mistake her for one of the ninjas they believe have been abducting people and refuse to let anyone else disappear. When they attack, the confrontation becomes completely one-sided. Hymno is far too fast and strong for the group, dropping one opponent with a punch and another with a kick, while coordinated attacks fail to slow her down. Even an older man swinging an axe is stopped instantly and thrown into the snow. A woman watching from a nearby house can only stare at the mismatch. Within moments, Hymno has beaten everyone around her and casually asks whether anyone else still wants to try. The commotion unexpectedly helps another group nearby who had been dealing with the same ninja problem. Kai arrives soon afterward and jokes that Hymno is more or less one of his people. A scream from inside the settlement redirects everyone's attention, and the locals explain that they captured another ninja the previous day. Many of them trained at Ghost Orchid Academy and originally assumed Hymno belonged to the same organization, leaving mysterious tokens behind. After realizing their mistake, they apologize, though Hymno does not seem bothered because the misunderstanding gave her an excuse to fight. The crowd then turns its anger toward the captured ninja girl, whose presence may finally provide a direct light on the people behind the disappearances. Kai asks for a private room and takes custody of the captured ninja, which immediately fuels crude speculation among the locals. They nevertheless step aside because anyone capable of dominating the situation so easily is clearly dangerous. Once inside, Kai orders Hymno to guard the entrance and make sure nobody interrupts. He then takes the prisoner upstairs and begins questioning her about the organization supporting her clan and any connection to outsiders beyond the region. The ninja insists she has no idea what he means and claims they belong to an ordinary local clan. Kai is not convinced. After everything he has already seen involving the mysterious marks and transformed victims, he knows there is almost certainly a larger force operating behind the group. Apex confirms the prisoner is lying, so Kai forms an orb of energy and presses it against her head, making the consequences of deception painfully clear. The threat works. She admits her group belongs to the Umber clan, and once Kai has the name, he releases her and returns downstairs. Hymno asks what he learned, but before he can explain, the small house suddenly erupts in flames. Everyone nearby stares at the blaze in confusion. A bespectacled man removes his glasses and turns, only to discover Kai standing directly in front of the burning building. Kai greets him casually, making it obvious that the explosion did not remove the person this man expected it to. Kai opens the encounter with a punch that sends the bespectacled man flying and cracks the disguise covering his face. Realizing his cover is already blown, the man tears the mask away himself. He demands to know how Kai recognized him, but receives no explanation. For a moment he pretends the entire conflict was a misunderstanding involving the people distributing the mysterious tokens. Then his expression changes and he throws a bomb before trying to escape. Kai appears behind him instantly, grabs him, and points out that cooperation might have kept him alive. A quick snap of the neck ends the pursuit. Kai decides the dead infiltrator may still lead them somewhere useful and leaves with Hymno, while the shinobi woman from the interrogation quietly follows as well. Before that confrontation, the captured shinobi had finally given Kai everything she knew. Apex confirmed she was telling the truth, so he untied her and examined the back of her neck, where a hidden control device had been implanted. Kai removes it and destroys it, with his own power nearly making her sick from the pain and shock. Outside, the bespectacled handler notices the restraint signal disappear and becomes confused because forced removal should have triggered an explosion. Assuming the system simply failed, he activates the remote detonator manually and accepts. The possible loss of one mid-rank shinobi, nothing happens. By then, Kai has already neutralized the device completely and is calmly disinfecting his hands as though the entire procedure were routine. The handler cannot understand why the implant still has not exploded, but Kai already anticipated the trap. Earlier, after meeting Hyemno, he had noticed the shinobi woman descending from upstairs and used his energy to interfere with the device. He even demonstrates the same power by gathering a massive burst in his hand and detonating it at a distance, creating the explosion everyone just witnessed. The shinobi realizes Kai did not merely interrogate her, he also saved her life. She and Hyemno follow him back to the war rig, where Kai settles onto the couch with a hot drink and finally relaxes. Since the clan now believes the woman died in the blast, he explains that she can speak freely without immediately exposing herself, provided she stops lying from this point forward. The former prisoner unexpectedly begins addressing Kai as her lord as well, copying Hyemno so naturally that he nearly spits out his drink. While they regroup, word reaches the Umber clan that young master Kaido has been confirmed dead, and that Kina supposedly died in the same explosion. As two outsiders, clan leaders dismiss Kaido as incompetent but still decide someone must pay for his death. Their retaliation falls on the nearby town. Armed shinobi descend on the residents, killing anyone who tries to flee and turning the streets into a massacre. The violence reflects what the organization has become. Once a minor shinobi family from Sakura Isle known as the Black Cut Clan, it renamed itself the Umbra Clan after the apocalypse and began expanding through force. The Umbra Clan has spent the apocalypse absorbing other shinobi families across Albion Isle. Those who submit are implanted with tiny listening bombs that function as both surveillance tools and restraints, while many families that resisted were simply wiped out. Kina appears to have been sent away by her father in an attempt to keep her safe. Kai then learns that the strange tokens are not ordinary trackers at all. They use biological microwave sensing to resonate with specific physical traits, allowing the clan to identify people whose bodies are suitable for experimentation. In other words, every marked household is being screened for potential test subjects, which explains why disappearances follow soon afterward. Once a suitable subject is selected, the process becomes even crueler if mutation develops too slowly. The organization murders the person's family in front of them to trigger extreme emotional stress and force a complete transformation into a killing-driven elite calamity beast. The technology is clearly artificial, and Kai already suspects which outside faction is capable of producing it. Luna reaches the same conclusion during their call. With her own mission complete, she plans to return to Dracoria because remaining in foreign territory no longer serves a purpose. Kai thanks Kina for the information she provided, then abruptly leaves both women standing in the snow with supplies and drives away before they can involve him in anything else. Hyemno and Kina are still trying to understand what happened when Kai's rig disappears into the distance. He wants no additional complications, but Luna calls again almost immediately. She explains that Kai needs to keep Kina alive and eventually hand her over, something she failed to mention before he abandoned the pair. Kai is already close to leaving Albion Isle, yet Luna blames him for never letting her finish. She adds another request: when possible, he should visit the Umbra clan's main base in East Haven and bring back a particular person. Kai suspects she really means abducting them, but Luna sees little distinction because the target originally comes from Dracoria. She also reminds him that he still owes her the Star Core from Zealandia. Luna offers to help locate the final Star Core and even mobilize several bases if Kai handles the East Haven request. That incentive is enough for him to turn the rig around. Their bargaining becomes playful, with Kai joking that asking Luna for favors is expensive enough to justify marriage, only for her to assure him the price would remain unchanged. Meanwhile, Hyemno and Kina travel by snowmobile to Hyemno's family home. Nobody answers the door, so they enter through the back and discover signs of a violent struggle, including blood throughout the damaged house. Before they can investigate, hidden attackers reveal they have been waiting there for days. Delighted that two valuable targets have finally arrived, one man steps out and immediately throws a bomb toward them. Hyemno and Kina avoid the explosion, but several pairs of blood-red eyes appear inside the smoke. Elite calamity beasts rush them from every direction, forcing the two women to fight back-to-back. They manage to kill several creatures together, so the man controlling the ambush decides to attack personally while they are distracted. At the critical moment, Hyemno suddenly stops moving. Faced with immediate death, she breaks through her gene lock and releases a much deeper reserve of power. The awakening mirrors what happened to Jade earlier, after unlocking her own potential. Jade had been able to hold back an entire wave of elite calamity beasts with only a sword. Hymeneo's transformation suggests she may now be capable of the same kind of explosive growth. Hymeneo's awakening turns the ambush around instantly, and the man's sneak attack becomes the last mistake he ever makes. Kai, meanwhile, is still trying to reach her by phone and eventually realizes she left the device behind. He decides that if anything happens to Kina, Luna can share the blame for failing to explain the mission properly. With no direct way to contact them, he continues toward East Haven instead. Elsewhere, another group of survivors celebrates recent victories over calamity beasts, singing about how Sangru knocked one giant creature over with an axe and kicked smaller ones. Aside with ease, the mood is lively until someone remembers Sangru is a Kodavan who can never return to his homeland. Briefly quieting the celebration before he deliberately raises everyone's spirits again, Sangru refuses to let the apocalypse destroy the little hope his community still has, but the celebration ends when people from a nearby base arrive once again. They demand that he hand over 2 children under orders from above. Sangru refuses immediately, even when the visitors try to soften him with familiar talk and gifts. Their real offer is far more tempting. 10 admission slots inside one of Albion Isle's 4 major bases in exchange for the siblings. For ordinary survivors, such places are almost impossible to enter, unless they are elite fighters or expendable labor. The negotiator knows exactly how valuable those slots are and expects the village's fear of the outside world to do what direct threats cannot. When Sangru still refuses, the base representatives reveal a truck packed with food, clothing, and other supplies. They do not force an answer immediately. Instead, they camp nearby and let scarcity work on the villagers, knowing desperation can divide the community from within. Secret squads quietly surround the settlement as backup. That night, Sangru climbs through the siblings' window and wakes their mother. He plans to take the children to Moonwatch Town, a neutral refuge protected by the Sakura Saint. Because staying until morning would leave them trapped, their mother reluctantly agrees that it may be the only way to keep them alive. At the same time, Kai's war rig is already racing across the snowfield on a route that will soon cross theirs. Sangru flees through the forest carrying the 2 children and suddenly spots Kai's war rig. With soldiers closing in, he leaps onto the roof without asking permission, trusting the speeding vehicle to carry them away. The pursuers lower their weapons because risking the children would defeat the entire purpose of the chase. Inside, Kai is resting but has already sensed everything happening outside. Rather than throw Sangru off, he becomes curious about an attunement-level fighter being hunted so aggressively. The escape angers another enemy who recently reached confluence and decides to use Kai's vehicle as a convenient test of his new strength. Confident that a single strike will crush the rig, he charges in without understanding what its defenses can do. The attacker slams his hammer into the rig's shield and is immediately blasted backward by the reflected force. Even Kai barely reacts, waking as though the vehicle only crossed a speed bump. Apex identifies the man as another outsider, which changes Kai's attitude instantly. He steps outside, pins the injured fighter down, and explains that the rig's passive defenses caused the damage. Even if the first clash was a misunderstanding, however, the man's connection to the outside world is reason enough for Kai to stop him. The attacker still reaches for his hammer, so Kai kills him with a single kick. Sangru and the children watch in stunned silence before Kai turns toward them and asks why outsiders are so determined to capture the pair. Sangru does not understand Kai's reference to outsiders, so Kai drops the subject. Sangru only knows that the main base wants the 2 children for some important experiment and that he must reach Moonwatch Town before they are taken. The town is considered completely neutral under the Sakura Saint's protection, with fighting forbidden and even calamity beasts unable to enter. That makes it one of the few places where ordinary residents can sleep without expecting sudden death. Sangru continues through the snow, dealing with the occasional beast along the way and wishing the powerful stranger in the silver rig had simply offered them a ride. Even so, he knows Kai's intervention already prevented the children from being recaptured. Kai's vehicle easily outpaces Sangru's group and reaches Moonwatch Town first. The settlement has no walls or visible barrier, which means its safety depends almost entirely on one person. Kai concludes that the so-called Sakura Saint is probably at Void Break rank. Before he can enter, several people block the road and ask whether he has seen a Kodavan man traveling with 2 children. Kai stops, steps outside, and stretches rather than letting Apex clear the path for him. He confirms that he saw the group, then moves without warning and kills the woman questioning him. The sudden attack freezes the others. For a moment before they draw their weapons and surround him, unaware that they have just chosen the worst possible opponent. The group attacks together, but Kai's aura alone blasts them backward before their weapons can matter. Inside Moonwatch Town, the Sakura Saint is already complaining about the role she chose. Maintaining a gentle public image and dealing patiently with everyone around her has become exhausting. And she is considering abandoning the identity entirely. Then she senses an extraordinary presence nearby and realizes someone at sequence break rank has entered the area. One surviving attacker reaches the same conclusion and panics. Instead of fighting Kai, he uses a smoke bomb disguised as a secret technique and runs for Moonwatch's protective zone. He had originally come to cut off Sangru's escape, but now the sanctuary has become his own only chance of survival. The fleeing man reaches Moonwatch and believes the no-fighting rule will protect him, but Kai appears directly behind him when a voice warns that combat is forbidden. Inside the ward, Apex identifies the speaker as another outsider. Kai immediately changes targets and punches the Sakura Saint before she can react, sending her flying. The terrified man rushes toward her for protection, only to discover that his supposed savior has already been beaten badly. He freezes as Kai approaches, begging the saint to intervene. She refuses to sacrifice herself for someone else's problem and points out that being called a saint does not mean she intends to become a martyr. The absurd argument leaves the hunted man with nowhere left to hide. The frightened outsider accuses the Sakura Saint of being useless, and she becomes so irritated that she threatens to abandon the title altogether. Kai ends the argument by releasing another burst of energy. Even though the saint blocks, the force launches her through the ceiling and far across the town, while the other man is eliminated almost simultaneously. The moment she lands, Kai is already standing in front of her again. She insists they have no personal grudge and explains that attacking outsiders is simply part of a contract she accepted. That word catches Kai's attention. As he prepares another strike, the woman finally admits she is connected to the origin array and claims she entered the region secretly rather than as part of a formal invasion. The Sakura Saint admits that the situation outside is more complicated than it appears because access to the passage is currently controlled by someone with legitimate clearance. Apex confirms she is telling the truth, so Kai takes her away from town and demands a clear explanation. Before answering, she asks which of three powerful beings he serves as a vessel for: Kira Moonwreath of the Elfkin, Sage Lord Chin of the Borkin, or Princess Apex of the Mechanical Kin. Kai says nothing, but Apex materializes behind him. The woman immediately recognizes her, drops to her knees and introduces herself as Boncha of the Origin Array. Kai can only sigh at yet another stranger pledging loyalty after barely meeting him. Elsewhere, Luna arrives at a grand castle in Zealandia and announces herself by smashing through the outer wall. Guards rush to stop her, but one swing knocks down an entire formation. She calls out Elder Zeal and accuses him of keeping something that belongs to Kai. Despite repeated requests to return it, Elder Zeal insists their sides have always stayed out of each other's affairs. Yet Luna has no patience left for diplomacy. She came specifically because Kai was ignored. When the old man attacks with his hammer, Luna meets him head-on and steadily drives him backward, proving that whatever authority he carries inside the castle means little against the capital's Valkyrie. Elder Zeal is eventually thrown into the shattered castle wall and appears defeated, only to launch one final surprise attack. Luna knocks the hammer from his hands and ends the fight decisively. At the same time, Boncha is giving Kai a massage when Luna calls to report that the Star Core has been recovered undamaged. A sequence break fighter as weak as Elder Zeal never had enough power to destroy it anyway. Kai leaves the old man's fate entirely to Luna and notes that only one Star Core remains missing. He then hangs up before she can finish, irritating her enough that she stomps on Elder Zeal while complaining that Kai never lets conversations reach a proper ending. Elder Zeal breaks down under Luna's pressure, but she makes one thing clear before leaving: he owes her a major favor. When he questions why Kai matters so much, Luna reminds him that 3 Void Break fighters from the West Coast Alliance vanished mysteriously on the same day and strongly implies Kai was responsible. That warning is enough to end the dispute. Luna then calls home and announces that she is heading toward Albion Isle. Meanwhile, Sangru finally reaches Moonwatch Town with the two children after an exhausting journey. Their relief turns to surprise when they spot Kai's familiar war rig already parked there. Kai steps out beside Bonsha, and Sangru runs over, delighted to see the powerful stranger again. Sangru complains that Kai knew they were all heading to Moonwatch and still refused to give them a ride, but his priority is finding the saint and securing shelter for the children. The irony is that Bonsha is standing right beside him. She reveals that she has abandoned the saint role and plans to leave with Kai. That same night, though, she offers Sangru a house in the town. Because the area is remote and rarely attacked by calamity beasts, she believes he is strong enough to protect the children himself. Sangru is grateful, but immediately worries about what will happen to the rest of the residents once their protector leaves. Far away in Duskmere, Jade is also processing a sudden change of her own. She advanced to Confluence far faster than expected. Jade reflects that sequence advancement is not like leveling slowly in a game. Once someone understands the process, they can move rapidly toward the limit allowed by their compatibility. And in theory, an exceptional person could climb from Coalescence to Void Break in a single night. During a call with Kai, Bonsha announces that she is packed and ready to leave, and the unfamiliar woman's voice immediately catches Jade's attention. She keeps her tone controlled but clearly becomes jealous when she realizes Kai is traveling with someone new. Kai considers explaining, then decides it would only complicate things. He ends the call and turns to find Sangru offering him a drink before departure. Meanwhile, Hyemno and Kina have captured a woman. While searching for Hyemno's missing father, Hyemno presses a blade to her throat, but Kina checks for the restraint implant used by the Umbra clan and finds nothing. Since she personally knows the clan's mid-rank shinobi, Kina concludes the prisoner belongs to another group. The woman explains that they are survivors persecuted by the Umbra clan who have banded together under the name Umbral Embers, hoping eventually to take revenge. That same night, far away at Sakura Isle's border, soldiers face another massive calamity beast wave. Cannons hammer the swarm, yet the creatures keep climbing the walls until the gates open, and a heavily armed mech charges directly into battle. The mech carries an energy cannon on one arm and a blade on the other, allowing it to destroy beasts at both long and close range. Under covering fire, it cuts through the swarm and releases a beam powerful enough to tear through multiple targets at once. Observers identify the machine as Blue Strike, a copy modeled after a mechanical kin guardian. Its creators boast that controlling the original Umbral spirit could allow them to challenge several Void Break fighters, though others warn that such confidence underestimates that level entirely. The real problem is that the Umbral spirit still retains fragments of consciousness, making direct deployment too dangerous until someone capable of overriding that mind can be found. Only a person with naturally matching neural resonance can force an interface with the Umbral spirit, bind it through blood, and erase the consciousness still trapped inside. That is why the Umbra clan wants the two children from Moonwatch Town and plans to send Blue Strike after them. Meanwhile, Kai's rig continues across the ice with Bonsha traveling beside him. They share wine Sangru brewed himself, and its weakened flavor reminds him of a homeland thousands of miles away. He quietly hopes the endless winter will eventually end. Bonsha, meanwhile, is far more excited by the food inside the rig. Kai considers it ordinary packaged fare, but she is amazed by the taste. Giving him another excuse to praise Dracoria's cuisine, Bonsha asks whether Dracoria is Kai's homeland but a strange sound outside interrupts the conversation. A blue mech is following the rig from above, carrying a masked, long-haired shinobi on its back. The pilot watches them carefully but does not attack and eventually flies away. At the same time, military trucks arrive outside Moonwatch Town and soldiers pour into the area, bringing back the same people who previously tried to seize the two children. Apex then appears beside Kai and reports that the mech carries a faint mechanical kin core resonance, although something about it feels wrong. Since the machine appears headed toward Moonwatch, Kai briefly considers the implication, but decides his current mission takes priority, reaching the Umbra clan's main base and retrieving Luna's target. Kai accelerates toward the Umbra clan's main base while the blue mech heads straight for Moonwatch Town. It hovers above the Saint's former house, charges its cannon and blows the building apart. Sangru sees military trucks arriving at the same time and quickly hides the two children before slipping away himself. The blonde pilot lands to inspect the ruins. Knowing a sequence break fighter should not die from one blast, He becomes suspicious that the saint may never have been inside. A local collaborator insists he personally saw the children taken into that house the previous day. The exchange makes the betrayal obvious. A little food was enough to convince an ordinary resident to sell out the people seeking sanctuary. The soldiers arrive moments later and tell Sangru he is already too late because the children supposedly left. With the saint, he does not believe them, so the search team forces its way inside and tears the house apart. Checking every drawer, bed, and floor covering, Sangru tries to stop them, but the blonde man appears behind him and kicks him into the snow. Soldiers pin him down while Chase pries up the floorboards. The hidden compartment reveals the two siblings exactly where Sangru left them, as the blonde man moves to finish Sangru off. He suddenly senses something dangerous approaching. Before anyone can react, a massive explosion shakes the entire area. The sky darkens under a surge of energy. As Luna arrives in spectacular fashion, Shade Blackcut immediately recognizes the capital's Valkyrie and realizes the situation has changed completely. Luna greets the Umbra clan with open contempt. Her presence alone blasting nearby soldiers off their feet. The blue mech activates while Shade demands to know why. She is on Albion Isle. Luna claims she was only passing through until she happened to find one of her targets, Shade himself, leader of the Umbra clan. While everyone focuses on her, Chase quietly grabs the two children and attempts to escape. The moment Luna notices, the group splits up and loads the siblings into separate vehicles. So capturing one will not automatically save the other. Sangru is left unsure which vehicle to chase while Luna engages Shade directly. The two exchange rapid, lethal attacks, but every hidden blade and close-range strike Shade attempts is casually deflected. Luna's overwhelming experience quickly exposes the weakness behind his sequence break rank. A light counter sends him tumbling through the snow, and she mocks him for forcing his advancement without properly mastering his own energy. Enraged by the insult, Shade finally reveals a binding technique intended to hold Luna in place long enough for the blue mech to attack. It is his best chance to turn the fight, but relying on a machine to compensate for the gap in skill only confirms Luna's assessment of him. Shade orders Blue Strike to fire, but Luna breaks the restraint before the mech can capitalize. She drives her spear directly through the incoming laser and severs one of the machine's arms. In a single pass, Shade tries to attack while she is distracted, yet even the combined assault cannot pin her down. Luna rises into the air and transforms into a black dragon, then crashes both Shade and the mech into the ground with one overwhelming strike. She lands without a scratch while everyone nearby stares in disbelief at the difference in power. A soldier quietly reports the disaster to command. Meanwhile, the vehicle carrying the younger sister runs into a completely different problem when it suddenly stops far from the battlefield. The escape vehicle has run out of fuel. As the drivers step outside to refuel, Sangru catches up and drops one of them with a punch, rescuing the little girl. He admits he may have hit harder than necessary, but she is simply relieved to see him. Back at the battlefield, Luna privately acknowledges that her own power carries a cost, and that she nearly pushed it too far. The experience gives her a better understanding of what Kai once went through. News of the defeat reaches Sakura Isle Military Command almost immediately. Blue Strike has been destroyed and Shade Blackcut killed. Since both were considered among Albion Isle's strongest assets, commanders are stunned to learn that the person responsible was the war goddess of Dracoria. The military leadership begins to fear that Dracoria has discovered what is really happening on Albion Isle. With Shade dead, lower-ranking officers are unsure what to do and are ordered out while senior personnel scramble to make private calls. One man slips into a corner with his phone, only for a woman to appear behind him and catch the secret communication. The message she intercepts changes everything. Shade Blackcut and Blue Strike were both defeated by Luna. For the persecuted shinobi families, that means the Umbra clan has suddenly lost its greatest protector. They immediately begin discussing revenge, though some worry about the experimental subjects still inside the main stronghold. Those creatures cannot distinguish friend from enemy, making a direct assault dangerous even with the clan leader gone. Despite the risk, the resistance decides its priority is to kill the remaining Blackcut leadership and rescue surviving members of the other clans. They plan to move the following night. Meanwhile, one infiltrator is caught using a surveillance blind spot to make an unauthorized satellite call and is warned not to repeat it, though he barely understands how thoroughly he is being manipulated. Luna leaves Moonwatch in a snow vehicle and reviews the larger pattern. Kai's discoveries, the East Haven main base, the outside faction, and the Umbra clan are clearly connected. Rather than wait, she decides to head directly toward the enemy stronghold, Sangru. Meanwhile, returns the rescued little girl to her mother, whose relief is immediate and overwhelming. Sangru leaves again almost at once because the boy is still missing. Without realizing it, nearly every major group involved is now converging on the same main base. Kai pauses his rig on a snowy mountainside to finish absorbing another starving deposit. He is pleased by the extra resource, especially because star points are no longer scarce, though Apex complains that the ores fracture. Particles can damage void break-level mass energy. Their conversation reveals that Apex's abilities lean heavily towards support functions, something that would make her extraordinarily valuable to many powerful people. Kai, however, casually uses that rare support energy for comforts as trivial as massages, a choice Apex finds both insulting and strangely characteristic of him. Once the absorption finishes, Kai starts the rig again and heads toward the growing crisis. Deep beneath the enemy base, another mech is waiting. Chase delivers the captured boy to a man who immediately begins manipulating him, asking whether he wants to become a hero. The child's eyes light up at the machine, showing how easily the promise works. Elsewhere, Soren complains that he abandoned the shinobi life long ago but still cannot escape old obligations, while others assume Hyemno has probably become lost somewhere outside. Their conversation ends when a red alert suddenly sounds. Throughout the base, every unit shifts to full readiness as sensors detect something approaching through the waters roughly 40 kilometers away. Sensors detect a massive calamity beast swarm closing on the base at high speed, and all combat personnel are ordered to the eastern gate. While the defenders scramble, a second threat enters from within. A convoy of military trucks returns to the stronghold, but the passengers are not friendly reinforcements. One infiltrator jokes that the guards deserve some rest after their patrol, then knocks them unconscious and opens the way for masked fighters. Hidden in the vehicles, the invaders pour through the gate while soldiers on the walls wait impatiently for the expected beast attack. Before anyone understands what is happening, alarms change. From an external assault to a ground breach inside the base itself, the internal attack erupts so quickly that soldiers begin falling before they can identify their attackers. Hyemno races toward the chaos, while masked shinobi and base forces clash across burning corridors. One invader even uses a rocket launcher to tear through Umbra clan fighters, turning the stronghold into a battlefield from both inside and outside. Kai's war rig arrives on a nearby mountainside just as the fighting intensifies. Luna had warned him another force might break into the base, and their arrival actually simplifies his plan. He had intended to try diplomacy before force, but now the defenders are already occupied. Boncha questions whether Kai was ever truly planning to be polite, while he calmly drinks tea and watches the base burn below before the two finally descend. Below the mountain, two factions are already locked in close combat. Grenades and blades turn every mistake into casualties on both sides, and even ordinary base soldiers complain that they were never allowed near the containment zone until the crisis forced them into the fight. Then a dark figure cuts across the battlefield too quickly for most people to follow. It is Hyemno. She tears through enemy lines on her way to the prison gate, dropping every guard before they can slow her down. The speed and precision surprise even veteran fighters. Once the entrance is clear, the resistance moves in behind her and forces the prison open, finally reaching the people they came to rescue. Inside the prison, Hyemno finds her father alive and is overwhelmed with relief. He is equally shocked to see how strong his daughter has become. The other prisoners rise and thank her, as emergency power restores the base's surveillance systems. In the control room, the remaining leadership confirms that the attackers are remnants of the persecuted clans and realizes a mole must have been operating inside the base for some time. Additional troops are ordered toward the containment zone. Before they can decide whether to let the young fighters deal with the breach, a woman intervenes with another plan. Deep below, experimental calamity beasts suspended in nutrient tanks suddenly awaken together, turning the laboratory itself into the next source of danger. The released experiments immediately massacre the soldiers around them. Gunfire only enrages the creatures further, and one charge can tear through several people at once. When officers demand that the beasts be stopped, the woman behind the release reveals that the old arrangement is over. Neither the Umbra clan nor the military command matters to her anymore. She uses her power to seize control of a commander's mind, forces him to shoot the people beside him, and then makes him turn the weapon on himself. Meanwhile, Hyemno's group leaves the prison only to run directly into the experimental subjects. The beasts are mindless and extremely dangerous, but Hyemno holds the front line long enough for the freed prisoners to rally behind her and fight their way forward. During the battle, Hyemno notices a distant ally standing high on the wall with an enormous glowing bow. One arrow strikes the ground with the force of artillery and clears a path through the beasts. Elsewhere, Luna faces another group of attackers. But a pink-haired companion asks her to rest and handles the weaker creatures herself with rapid gunfire and agile movement. Luna then notices a military truck moving through the chaos. Kai, meanwhile, walks through the base drinking cola and wondering why Luna came to Albion Isle personally if she still expects him to retrieve her cousin. Apex reports 7 outsiders inside the stronghold, but Kai leaves Bonsha to deal with them until a familiar name cuts through the noise: Nightingale Blackcut. Kina has cornered Nightingale Blackcut and is ready to settle an old score when Kai appears. Seeing him gives her enough confidence to finish the confrontation. Nightingale desperately presses the detonator linked to Kina's old restraint device, but nothing happens because Kai already removed it, while Kina takes revenge. The woman responsible for the larger conspiracy strolls through the collapsing base and casually brings an attacking beast under her control. She soon crosses paths with Bonsha, and the two recognize each other immediately. Bonsha identifies the woman as a hostile tuner and attacks without hesitation, blasting her across the snow before she can turn more of the battlefield against them. The tuner complains about being attacked on sight, but Bonsha has already read enough from her eyes to know she is an enemy. Their fight escalates as Bonsha fires repeated energy beams while the woman takes control of nearby people and calamity beasts, using them as living weapons. Bonsha responds with a barrier that absorbs the assault and then erupts outward, throwing everything back. Elsewhere, Kina finishes Nightingale and finally exhales. Kai gives her water and asks for help locating someone inside the base. He wants the target brought somewhere safe, while he handles the remaining outsiders. Kina agrees, though she nervously asks whether he plans to abandon her again. Kai promises he will not, and she hugs him before hurrying away to complete the task. Kai plans to hand Kina and the person she retrieves over to Luna, which will settle his promise. He then asks Apex to locate every outsider in the base. Their positions appear in his mind instantly, and he begins eliminating them one by one faster than anyone can track. The first 2 fall almost immediately, while Hyemno is already locked in a difficult fight with a 4th target, an archer skilled enough to hold off an assassin at close range. Elsewhere, a vehicle quietly enters the chaotic base carrying people focused on another objective: the mech and the captured boy. Sangru arrives at nearly the same time, determined to rescue Leon, but the devastation around the stronghold is so severe that he freezes for a moment before moving again. Hyemno continues chasing the archer, who cannot defeat her directly and instead fires into crowded areas to create panic and slow the pursuit. Hyemno's father watches with pride at how far she has advanced. When the chase drags on, Kai intervenes with a tiny disruption that knocks the archer off balance. Hyemno immediately takes advantage, cuts her down and confirms the kill before sheathing her blade. She senses that Kai helped but barely has time to process it. On the other side of the base, Bonsha's battle with the tuner is also reaching a turning point. Realizing she cannot win cleanly, the woman orders every controlled beast to attack Bonsha at once and uses the distraction to flee. Bonsha destroys the last beasts around her with a single beam, though the effort leaves her breathing hard. The wounded tuner escapes toward the mech, frustrated that a plan she thought was already won has been complicated by Bonsha's arrival. There she meets Senna, who demands control of Umbral Zero. Senna warns that the machine cannot function without void break-level mass energy, even if its remaining consciousness has been overwritten. The warning becomes her last useful contribution. Shade Blackcut suddenly appears behind her and cuts her throat, revealing that his earlier death was staged. He needed his own people to believe the deception long enough for their enemies to expose themselves, and now he intends to use the chaos to finish the plan. Shade admits the fake death was necessary to lure out the opposition, but he also knows Luna may come after him. Once the trick is exposed, a body double fooled her once. Surviving a second encounter is far less certain. He orders the others to activate Umbral Zero quickly. Inside the mech's core, Leon is already being used as the central power source. Elsewhere, Kina has completed Kai's request and is waiting by the roadside with the woman he wanted found. Luna arrives and immediately recognizes her cousin Lana. Kina is stunned to discover that the woman standing before her is the war goddess of Dracoria. With both targets now secured, Luna loads them into her vehicle and prepares to move them out before the collapsing base creates another complication. Kina finally realizes Kai is connected to Dracoria, and Luna tells her to travel back there with Lana. Later, Kina may be needed to testify about what happened on Albion Isle, while her future allegiance can be decided afterward. Meanwhile, Kai has eliminated the last outsider on his list when Hyemno rushes over and embraces him, thrilled to reunite. With her lord, her family is bewildered by the title until her father admits that he had actually arranged for her to serve someone else. Hyemno responds with obvious disgust. She believes Kai is the person she was meant to find and has already given him her loyalty, leaving her father to realize his crude drawing. And vague instructions created a completely different outcome from the one he intended. Hyemno refuses to change her allegiance, arguing that a loyal warrior should serve only one lord. She proudly announces that Kai has already reached sequence break, which instantly changes her father's attitude. He abandons his objections, introduces himself respectfully, and tells Hyemno to serve Kai well without disgracing the Frost family. The rapid reversal is almost comical. But there is little time to enjoy it. Shade Blackcut suddenly appears alive and blocks their escape. Everyone thought he had died. Yet he moves through the group before they can react, cutting throats with terrifying speed. Panic spreads as survivors realize the Umbra clan leader is not only alive but still strong enough to massacre them almost effortlessly. Shade tears through the group, using his shadows to kill anyone who tries to resist. The others can barely track him, let alone fight back, until Kai steps in and launches him across the snow with one charged punch. While everyone stares at the sudden reversal, Luna arrives in a red streak and heads directly into the underground laboratory. She destroys the incubation tanks holding the experimental calamity beasts, wiping out the remaining batch before they can be released. With the base already nearly empty of loyal troops, the surviving soldiers decide self-preservation matters more than defending a collapsing command structure. If the invaders leave on their own, they are willing to let the fight end there rather than sacrifice more lives. Shade attempts another assassination strike against Kai, but Kai catches the blade tip and shatters it before beating him into the ground. To everyone watching, the feared clan leader is being handled like a ragdoll. Shade escapes only by using the same trick as before, separating a shadow from his body and reappearing elsewhere. His relief lasts seconds. He runs directly into Boncha, tries to force his way past, and is slapped away when she blocks him. Then he looks up and finds Luna waiting as well, after several days of meeting opponents far stronger than expected. Shade finally realizes he has escaped one monster only to land between two more. The pressure is too much for Shade and he collapses. While Kai confirms that the body left behind is another double, Luna soon arrives dragging the real Shade by the collar, with Boncha following behind. She greets Kai enthusiastically, leaving everyone else completely confused by how casually these terrifying fighters interact. Elsewhere in the ruined base, Sangru is still searching for Leon. He finds Chase fighting off thralls and attacks before the man can escape, dropping the nearby guard and pinning Chase to the ground. Sangru demands to know where the boy has been taken. Chase claims it is already too late, but Sangru refuses to accept that answer and presses a gun to his head, until he finally gets the information he needs. By the time Sangru reaches the hidden laboratory, Umbral Zero's fusion rate has already reached 95%. The scientist overseeing the process is impatient for Shade to return, only for Sangru to burst in and destroy the control console with one punch. The man rages at him but cannot physically stop the attack. Then the mech suddenly breaks its own containment glass and activates without permission. The consciousness fusion has failed just 5% short of completion, yet the scientist decides to force the experiment anyway. He removes his glasses, revealing a glowing violet eye, and orders Umbral Zero to kill the intruder. The machine tears itself free from its restraints and launches out of the facility. Before Sangru can reach Leon, Sangru is shocked when the mech calls his name and then turns its cannon on the scientist instead. Outside, another explosion throws Umbral Zero into view, and everyone notices it differs from the blue machine seen earlier. Sangru tries to reach Leon, promising to get him out, but the boy does not understand why he needs saving. He believes becoming the mech's core has made him a hero. Apex identifies Umbral Zero as one of the mechanical kin, though little remains beyond an empty shell. When the machine charges its cannon, Kai raises a hand and cancels the blast head-on, proving the weapon cannot overpower him even at full output. Kai asks Apex how a princess of the mechanical kin would judge the damaged warrior. She answers that a true mechanoid does not fear death, and asks Kai to grant it release. Most people nearby cannot even sense Apex because they remain below sequence break, so Kai appears to be talking to empty air. Umbral Zero suddenly attacks the surrounding base, while Leon proudly tells Sangru that this destruction is proof of his new power. The boy's twisted excitement convinces Kai there is no clean way to separate him from the corrupted machine. He flashes directly in front of the mech and drives a kick into its core, launching the massive body across the landscape until it crashes into a distant mountainside. He then orders Hyemno to escort the others away from the next stage of the fight. Hyemno says goodbye and leaves with the others while Boncha asks whether Kai needs help against Umbral Zero. She admits the machine could threaten most fighters, but in front of Kai, it is little more than scrap. On the empty mountainside, the mech's size works against it. Every heavy strike misses, and Kai repeatedly redirects its momentum until it damages itself. One clean hit to the core brings the machine to a smoking halt. Leon cannot understand why everyone opposes him, when he only wanted to become a hero and protect people. He launches one last desperate blast, but Kai blocks it easily and points out the tragedy. Leon became intoxicated by borrowed power before ever learning what being a hero actually meant. Kai is ready to finish the mech when Sangru arrives and asks for one chance to save Leon himself. Because Sangru has proven to be a decent man, Kai grants him exactly 1 minute before he steps back in. Sangru approaches even as Umbral Zero automatically locks on and begins charging. Leon's remaining consciousness fights against the machine, desperately trying to cancel the attack. Sangru uses that hesitation to rush forward, smashing through the outer armor with 2 powerful punches and opening a path into the core. Kai sits nearby drinking as the rescue attempt unfolds, watching to see whether Sangru can reach the boy before the 60 seconds run out. Sangru notices the damaged section Kai struck earlier and forces his way through the opening into Umbral Zero. He grabs Leon and drags him out despite taking a brutal electrical shock from the mech. Once the boy is free, the machine addresses Apex directly. She asks Kai to suppress its mass energy just long enough to prevent a critical overload because she wants to give one of her own kind a proper end. The war rig breaks apart around Kai, its armor plates swirling through the air before reassembling over his body as a combat suit. Speaking through him, Apex tells the dying mechanoid warrior not to hold back and to unleash its strongest final strike so she can remember the last light of one of her people. Umbral Zero obeys its princess and gathers every remaining reserve into one final attack. Apex channels power through Kai's armored body and meets the fully charged blast head-on, dissolving the energy as she pushes forward. The collision ends with the mech shattering completely in a violent explosion. Kai lands beside the burning wreckage and walks over to Sangru, who is lying near Leon. The rescue succeeded too late to save Sangru from the damage he took. Kai tells him there is no way to reverse it. Sangru accepts the news more calmly than expected, and as his strength fades, his thoughts return to the family he lost during the apocalypse and the last phone call he could never forget. Sangru remembers his hungry children waiting at home while his wife had already gone missing, followed by a scream over the phone that confirmed the worst. That memory has haunted him ever since. In the present, he asks Kai how the liquor tasted. Kai calls it terrible, tosses the empty bottle back and walks away. Sangru smiles when he realizes Kai drank it all anyway. In his final moments, the endless white landscape gives way to an image of his wife and daughter waiting for him, and the family is finally reunited in his mind. Back at the main base, the night's fighting begins to settle. Chase carries the wounded commander through a retinal-locked door, believing he is headed toward medical care, but the older man has another secret to reveal. The commander explains that the base could never have grown so quickly without outside support, and that its location was chosen for a reason. Ancient records such as the Hell's Lexicon and Dracoria's Classic of Mountains and Seas were not describing myths at all. The strange creatures in those texts came from beyond, beneath this very base. A primordial calamity beast from an ancient era has been dormant the entire time. Its existence is what allowed the base and the outside powers to maintain an uneasy balance, because everyone understood what would happen if it were released. The commander points to a single control and admits that pressing it would ensure. Nobody nearby survives. Chase realizes what he intends and fires, but the warning comes too late. The commander activates the control before Chase can stop him. A surge of energy shoots into the sky and forms what first looks like a strange pattern until countless blood-red eyes open within it. With Umbral Zero destroyed, Kai has already returned to the base and is gathering everyone into the war. Rig for the trip back to Dracoria. Before they can leave, the ground begins shaking beneath the entire complex. Buildings collapse inward as something enormous tears through the foundations. Even Luna and Hymno immediately sense the danger. The base splits open, and several gigantic beasts rise from below with furious roars, revealing that the commander's final act has awakened the ancient threat. Buried underneath them, the emerging creature has countless dragon-like heads and a body so enormous that its roar alone carries enough force to devastate the surroundings. Hymno realizes they may be looking at an extinction-class calamity beast, something far beyond the enemies they have fought. So far, Kai orders everyone into the war rig immediately. Against a monster of this scale, individual fighters are almost meaningless. Its breath can erase entire lines of people, while a sweep of its tail hits with the force of an earthquake. The only sensible choice is to retreat. Return toward Dracoria and develop a plan with greater resources. Far away at Duskmere Base, Jade and Commander Sue are discussing the intelligence file Kai left behind, unaware that the threat is already escalating beyond Albion Isle. Jade admits she has been so focused on becoming stronger that she nearly forgot Kai's file. A phone call interrupts the conversation, and whatever Commander Sue hears immediately changes his expression. Reports confirm that the newly awakened creature may be too strong even for sequence break fighters. He orders Frontier Command to enter Level 1 alert and activate the emergency protocol reserved for extinction-class calamity beasts. Across the region, outposts reach the same conclusion: Albion Isle may already be lost. The creature was released in the Nullmess Expanse, where nobody nearby is capable of stopping it, and its current path appears to lead directly toward Dracoria. As the monster advances, a lone figure finally appears in the sky ahead of it. The figure is a monk surrounded by golden light, while Kai remains inside the wall. Rig calmly drinking tea as everyone else worries about the approaching disaster. He argues that if the sky falls, the strongest people should be the ones to hold it up, although his companions immediately wonder whether anyone stronger than him is actually available. Kai stays quiet because the crisis has not yet become his responsibility. Luna soon calls and confirms that Dracoria is preparing for the worst. The old leadership has already sent Fanshin to delay the beast, with a specialized weapon called the Bismuth Purge Shell waiting behind him. The device is designed to destroy every cell in a calamity beast instantly, but Luna's hesitation makes it clear nobody knows what happens if even that fails. According to outside intelligence, an extinction-class calamity beast appearing in the Nullmess Expanse is already close to domain tier strength. Some leaders worry that sending Fanshin alone is far too dangerous, but the alternatives are limited. Luna is poorly suited to delaying tactics, while Lukai rarely takes risks without a clear benefit, with no better option. Fanshin becomes the first line of defense. He rises into the creature's path surrounded by golden light and calls on the Sage Lord. For power, scriptures materialize behind him as energy surges through his body, and a colossal golden figure forms at his back, giving him enough force to attempt a full sealing technique against the approaching monster. Fanshin raises the golden figure's hand and turns the floating scriptures into chains, trapping the beast inside a sealing barrier. The monster answers with a blast of breath strong enough to shatter the chains, but the outer barrier still holds. Furious, it fixes Fanshin in its memory and roars. While a new light streaks across the sky, the Bismuth Purge Shell has arrived. Knowing his role is complete, Fanshin releases his remaining techniques and retreats before the weapon strikes the beast directly in the chest. Normally, the Bismuth payload should dissolve a calamity beast's cells and genetic structure almost instantly. This time, nothing happens. The extinction-class creature only becomes angrier and releases a shockwave powerful enough to devastate everything nearby. Fanshin can hardly believe the weapon failed. Back at command, the reaction is even worse because a Bismuth shell capable of instantly killing king-class beasts has done absolutely nothing. Leadership immediately orders a global special defense response and tells Dracoria to alert every major command center. Some officers complain that Frontier Command may simply watch from the sidelines. But the warning is larger than one battle. Fanshin returns to the fight and tries to stall the monster again, yet the power gap is overwhelming. He is nearly struck down when countless blue beams suddenly arrive from the distance. The pulse fire does little real damage, but it buys the monk the seconds he needs to survive until stronger help arrives. The blue beams come from Kai's war rig, which stops nearby as Kai and Luna flash out together. They watch Fanshin struggle against the beast and briefly remember the beginning of the apocalypse when the three once fought side by side. Luna teases Kai about how shy and innocent he used to be, but Fanshin has no patience for nostalgia while he is still barely avoiding death. He calls for them to save the flirting until later because he is almost out of ways to hold the line. Kai finally acknowledges that the monk has done enough. With the easy options exhausted, he and Luna prepare to step in together, knowing that once they commit their full strength, there will be no reason to hold anything back. Kai and Luna release their power at the same time. Red and blue pillars of energy tear into the sky, splitting clouds and cracking the ice simply from the overflow. The Extinction class beast immediately shifts its attention toward them. Both fighters then construct a sequence break domain designed to favor their own energy, amplifying their strength even further. Inside that controlled space, the difference becomes decisive. They attack together, stacking their power until the creature that survived Fanshin's seal and ignored the bismuth purge shell can no longer endure the assault. The battle finally ends with the monster defeated beneath their combined force, closing the immediate crisis that began beneath the ruined base. With the beast destroyed, the Sakura Isle chapter reaches its end, but the consequences spread much farther. In a distant castle, Kira suddenly senses an energy signature similar to Apex and realizes someone has broken through to domain tier. Then she notices a second one. Two new domains appearing almost simultaneously means the existing balance of power has just changed. Kira remains outwardly calm, but she knows other factions will panic. At a hidden outsider outpost, that panic begins immediately. Sensors confirm that the mass energy tide inside the nullmass expanse crossed a critical threshold and produced a genuine domain. The observers cannot believe one of the region's inhabitants has reached a level they thought should remain impossible there. The outsiders respond by ordering every experiment in the nullmass expanse halted until the origin world issues new instructions. Everyone is told to hide and avoid revealing their identity. Meanwhile, Kai's rig speeds through the snow with Luna sleeping inside. Boncha is deeply disturbed that two Eternals have created domains at once, because such people could destabilize the origin world if they ever entered it. Kai asks whether she can contact the origin array. She explains that she only slipped through when the wardens briefly seized the passage and never had time to establish a cross-realm anchor. Kai then presses her on how the wardens actually view Eternals, because their policy seems to shift between recruiting them and protecting them. Boncha admits the wardens' attitude depends on whether Eternals threaten the origin world. She explains that the Forged Array currently has 3 domain-tier beings, while the Wardens have only 2, yet either Warden is rumored to be strong enough to overpower all 3 Forged domains alone. The Origin Array has only a handful of comparable figures. Boncha is surprised by how directly Kai questions the balance of power, but the discussion ends as night falls. Kina lies beside him later and cannot sleep, quietly playing with his hair until she wakes him. Far away at Duskmere Base, Jade finally returns to the flash drive Kai left behind and connects it to a computer, opening information far larger than the local conflicts she has been fighting. The download finishes quickly and the file begins playing automatically. It describes a vast cosmic domain centered around humanity, where countless intelligent species live together within a realm called Andromeda. The region serves as both a crossroads for civilizations and a boundary between order and chaos, regardless of species or technology. Every civilization there is measured by the same fundamental laws: mass energy, energy tier, control of matter, and the efficiency of converting energy. Together, these principles determine how powerful an individual species can become, and ultimately how high its civilization can rise. These laws apply across every territory and species, making them the universal measure of strength. Near the end of the Age of Expansion, however, one hidden race suddenly drew attention: the Eternals. Other civilizations discovered that not a single Eternal adult was ordinary. Even the weakest had already reached coalescence, and at equal tiers their mass energy exceeded that of almost every other species. The revelation sent fear through the established powers because the Eternals possessed extraordinary natural potential despite having relatively small numbers and limited resources. Before long, some factions began arguing that the safest solution was to destroy the entire race before it became strong enough to challenge the existing order. When one powerful species violated the realm's accords and attacked the Eternals first, the hidden race finally revealed what it could do. In less than a week, the Eternals crushed the aggressor completely. That victory frightened nearly every other species in Andromeda into uniting against them, facing the possibility of total war. The Wardens intervened and negotiated a different punishment. The Eternals were not exterminated but exiled to the deepest part of the realm, the Nullmess Expanse. An isolated replicated dimension once used to imprison the most dangerous criminals in existence. As ages passed across the stars, Andromeda gradually forgot the people it had cast away, leaving the Eternals to disappear into legend inside their sealed prison. Much later, beyond Andromeda's borders in the barren dead reaches, a sealed pocket of space erupted with monstrous life. These creatures were born already possessing coalescence-level mass energy and spread through the region with savage speed, creating the deadliest crisis the realm had ever faced. Every major species eventually remembered the one place where mass energy could be completely suppressed, the Nullmess Expanse. Inside that dimension, even a domain-tier being would be reduced to ordinary physical limits, which meant the invading monsters should weaken as well. After emergency deliberation, the civilizations of Andromeda agreed to reopen the ancient gateway and redirect the beast swarm into the prison realm, hoping to scatter the attack and relieve the pressure on the wider galaxy. The plan worked at first, but opening a gateway sealed for tens of thousands of years created a consequence nobody anticipated. Deep space cold and traces of outside mass energy began leaking steadily into the Nullmess Expanse. The temperature collapsed, covering the entire realm in ice and beginning what its inhabitants would call the Great Freeze. At the same time, the returning mass energy awakened something inside a small number of exceptionally gifted Eternals. For the first time in ages, humans within the prison dimension could sense and use that power again. What looked to the survivors like an unexplained natural catastrophe was actually the result of Andromeda reopening the gateway, and the same decision that brought the cold also began restoring abilities their ancestors had lost. The crisis soon became even more complicated. A faction inside Andromeda began using genetic material from the invading monsters to push beyond normal mass energy limits. And some experiments succeeded. The realm eventually split into 3 camps. The Origin Array rejected all genetic fusion, the Forged Array embraced it, and the Wardens remained officially neutral. As the Forged Array grew more reckless, it used beast control as an excuse to station forces around the Nullmess Gateway while secretly trying to capture Eternals for further experiments. None of those factions expected an ancient vow made 10,000 years earlier to interfere with their plans. Just as Jade reaches that point in the recording, the screen abruptly goes dark and the controls stop responding. The interruption is only another blackout, while faraway Kai's war rig arrives outside Luna's residence. She regrets missing the chance to meet him on Albion Isle but quickly turns to the urgent search for more starving ore. Then she surprises him with a gift. The moment Kai first mentioned what he needed, Luna had already sent people looking, and she now opens a safe containing the item they recovered. Kai is genuinely grateful because it saves precious time. Luna tries to keep him around a little longer, but the larger mission cannot wait. Kai eventually returns to the rig and explains that Luna will join them later after finishing her own work. Before heading toward the polar ice wall, however, he plans one final stop at Duskmere. Kai tells Hymno she will remain in Duskmere rather than travel to the polar ice wall. The cross-realm gateway there is surrounded by deep space cryogenic radiation strong enough to overwhelm a confluence-level body, and calamity beasts are everywhere, including king-class creatures. Even void break fighters avoid going deep into that forbidden zone. The danger is amplified by the Nullmess Expanse itself, where usable mass energy is scarce. Outside that realm, the same fighters could withstand far more because their powers would not be suppressed so heavily. Hymno is fascinated by the idea and jokes that in a normal mass energy environment, she might practically be able to fly through the sky and tunnel through the ground. Kai admits the comparison is not far off. At one Apex outpost, another Calamity Beast attack demonstrates how much Kai's people have improved. None of the guards possesses overwhelming individual power, but disciplined teamwork lets them handle the creatures with ease. Watching them coordinate reminds Kai that ordinary fighters can become formidable when everyone understands their role. Later, the war rig stops briefly in an empty snowfield and Kai sees a blonde girl smiling and waving in the distance. He knows the image is only a hallucination tied to a past he would rather avoid. So he starts the engine and keeps moving. Soon he reaches Duskmere base with Boncha and Hyemno. The gate guards stop them at first, then one recognizes Kai and shouts so loudly that the entire entrance erupts into excitement. The guard loudly announces that Duskmere's son-in-law has returned, attracting curious residents and new recruits who have never seen Kai before. Veterans immediately begin retelling how he once saved the base single-handedly. Kai recognizes the guard from his first visit but is completely confused by the new title. The explanation is even more surprising. Too many newcomers have recently tried to approach Jade, so she apparently ended the problem by telling everyone she and Kai had already been married before the apocalypse. Kai can only stare as the guard returns to his post, wondering whether Jade created the rumor herself. Beside him, Hyemno is more concerned about a practical issue. She still cannot communicate properly with most people inside Duskmere. Kai promises to install a language module for Hyemno, but the conversation is interrupted when a white-haired woman suddenly rushes over, embraces him, and kisses him. Boncha and Hyemno are left staring while Jade makes it clear she has become stronger and no longer intends to be dead weight. She wants to join the mission to guard the polar ice wall, and with the crisis now reaching higher command, secrecy about her abilities matters less. Elsewhere, another hidden conflict is ending badly. In a ruined base, a wounded butterfly-themed woman confronts Helena, leader of the Western League, only to discover that a trusted man has betrayed her. Helena thanks the victim for unknowingly feeding them intelligence and then kills her with a single swing. After eliminating the butterfly girl, Helena orders the traitor to send false intelligence and hide the Western League's next move. Back at Duskmere, Jade escorts Kai toward the command office, where Autumn and several familiar faces are already waiting. Commander Su jokes that seeing Kai has become difficult now that his name carries so much weight. He mentions how other leaders become nervous the moment Kai is brought up, and admits Duskmere has benefited from the rumors linking him to Jade, opportunistic factions hoping to stay on Kai's good side have begun prioritizing supplies for the base, meaning even an exaggerated personal rumor has translated into real political and material advantages for Duskmere. Commander Su admits Duskmere has been thriving, especially now that Jade alone can rival the combat power of an entire base. He would like more time with Kai, but nearly every major fighter in the world is already heading toward the polar ice wall, so he cannot reasonably keep Jade behind. Kai and Jade confirm they will leave shortly. In the lounge, Boncha is entertaining the children with a conjured rabbit, showing a surprisingly gentle side. Once the meeting ends, everyone gathers beside the war rig for farewells. Jade, Boncha, and Kai will travel to the ice wall while Hyemno remains behind. Autumn simply asks Kai to be careful, and he takes the warning seriously before preparing to leave. Hyemno promises to protect everyone in Duskmere, and the war rig pulls away toward the polar ice wall. Outside, the apocalypse remains an endless field of white. Jade asks about the mechanical kin princess, but Kai explains that Apex is still fusing with the star core and may not awaken soon. That leads back to the promise Apex carried from the origin world. When the cross-realm gateway opened, she was supposed to send her true form directly into the central axis and destroy it, permanently sealing the only entrance before calamity beasts could flood the Nullmess expanse. The wider factions had already decided the Eternals were expendable if sealing the gateway protected everyone else, so Apex's mission had always been both necessary and dangerously lonely. Apex remembered that promise even after reaching the Nullmess expanse. When the moment came, she charged into the gateway's central axis, only to hear someone behind her confirm that the mechanical kin were Eternals after all. A golden beam struck her true form and nearly threw her back out of the passage. The attackers realized the gateway was rejecting her and sent 2 sequence break fighters after her, reasoning that the outside mass energy already leaking into the Nullmess expanse would keep them strong enough to survive. Apex, however, was being expelled uncontrollably into a realm that could not properly contain her domain tier mass energy. The pursuers argue over who should follow, then move on while Apex crashes into the snow badly damaged. Her true form begins cracking because the Nullmess expanse cannot sustain the domain tier mass energy tied inside her. To survive the gateway's rejection, her core splits into 3 crystal fragments that scatter in different directions. One disappears beneath a black sea, hiding beyond anyone's reach. Another streaks across a city like a shooting star while Kai happens to be outside on a late-night walk. That second shard is the one that strikes him, linking his later awakening directly to Apex's shattered core and the failed attempt to seal the cross-realm gateway. Kai suddenly wakes from the dream, surprised that those memories are still resurfacing. Jade wakes as well, but the war rig is running smoothly. And nothing is wrong inside. At the polar ice wall, however, a huge crowd of fighters has already gathered. Rumors claim the forged array, and wardens have agreed to eliminate every sequenced fighter among the Eternals before sealing the gateway, preventing the nullness expanse from producing more powerful individuals. Some consider the plan monstrous because it leaves ordinary people trapped with the apocalypse. Others argue the goal is not outright extermination and may even reduce future suffering. Meanwhile, across Andromeda, intelligence networks begin cataloging the powerful Eternals who have emerged. The list includes sequence break fighter Yumar the Reaper and Elder Zeal, the same old man Luna previously defeated. Jade is identified as Duskmir's Void Break Sword Saint, with a 90% compatibility rating high enough to place her on a kill-on-sight list. Helena and Fanchon are considered quasi-domain fighters because both can briefly reach domain-level power. Analysts connect them to Kira Moonwreath and Sage Lord Qin, noting that Qin once predicted the Eternals would inevitably rise, and that only they could ultimately resolve the Calamity Beast crisis. That prophecy explains why several powerful beings defied the wider realm and entered the Nullmess expanse long before the current conflict became visible. Sage Lord Qin entered the Nullmess expanse with Kira, a close friend of the mechanical Qin princess, despite strong opposition from the wider realm. The dimension could not sustain their domain-tier mass energy. Qin's physical body eventually shattered, while Kira Moonwreath's spirit dissolved. Like Apex, both survived only because their consciousness anchored itself to exceptionally compatible eternal hosts. That sacrifice allowed them to keep influencing events inside the prison realm long after their original forms were gone. The broadcast ends without revealing where those hosts are now. Listeners are frustrated, but veterans warn that recognizing either domain vessel would not help much. Anyone who actually meets them may not survive long enough to share the discovery. At the polar ice wall, Helena and Fanchon are talking quietly when Kai's war rig finally arrives. The vehicle skids to a stop and Kai steps out with Boncha and Jade, causing the crowd to clear a path instinctively. Some are shocked that Dracoria's domain-tier fighter looks so young, while others warn them to keep quiet because Kai previously destroyed the Western League's strongest people so thoroughly that the organization still fears provoking him. The gossip becomes awkward when Helena suddenly rushes over and hugs Kai warmly. Everyone who had just described the Western League's hatred is forced to reconsider how much they actually understand about the relationship. The expedition quickly organizes by strength. Fighters at Confluence tier or above will advance into the ice wall, while weaker people remain behind to defend supply lines and intercept anyone escaping the passage. Deep space radiation becomes more intense the farther they travel, so everyone must stop when their body reaches its limit. The enemy suffers from the same radiation, meaning lower-tier outsiders will be most desperate to break towards safer ground. Rear guards therefore have a vital job, even if they never reach the main battlefield. With roles clear, the strongest fighters charge up the frozen wall together. Each has different abilities and survival limits, but all understand the same objective as the first massive Calamity Beast swarm appears on the horizon. The advance barely slows. Fighters unleash their abilities and tear through the beast swarm despite its numbers. Scarlet is knocked down by a king-class creature, but Jade reaches her in time and freezes the monster solid with a single strike. Kai then gathers energy and releases a blast that erases every nearby beast at once, leaving the others stunned by the scale of his power. With the route cleared, the group continues until they finally reach the interworld rift itself. On the opposite side of the cross-realm gateway, mechanical kin wardens are already stationed aboard a heavily armed flagship, and the forged array has arrived with a flagship of its own. Both sides are waiting for the Eternals to reach the passage. On the far side of the gateway, both the mechanical kin wardens and the forged array finalize their preparations. Their intelligence suggests the Eternals are divided and focused on defending separate territories, so the fleets hover in position waiting for the passage to open. Instead, a ripple appears and Kai's face suddenly forms across the gateway itself. A massive burst of energy erupts before the enemy can react, shattering their ships and leaving the crews drifting helplessly in space. The open gateway then pulls the survivors inside. On the Nulma side, they tumble out one after another and crash into the snow, disoriented and completely exposed to the Eternal fighters already waiting for them. The Eternals attack before the newcomers can recover, turning the arrival into an ambush outside the gateway. The surviving enemy forces are furious and confused, especially because even Apex once struggled against the passage's expulsion force. The fact that everyone can now remain inside suggests the Nulma's expanse contains far more mass energy than it did in the past, which also explains the appearance of domain-tier Eternals. The trapped fighters decide they need to escape quickly, only to discover the exit is already sealed off. Kai emerges from the gateway and recognizes the strongest opponent among them, Hong, one of Andromeda's most dangerous sequence fighters. Kai had hoped for another surprise attack, but the confrontation is now unavoidable. Hong is not surprised Kai recognizes him and asks whether he truly intends to fight all 4 opponents alone. Kai answers by snapping his fingers and flooding the area with charged energy, trapping the group before they can spread out. Hong and the others release their domains together to resist, but Kai's attack continues growing rather than ending after one wave. The bolts surrounding them turn black as his mass energy overwhelms their defenses. Hong realizes his own domain cannot push back directly and activates the mark above his head, launching several powerful counterattacks. Kai blocks every strike, but the effort buys the others enough time to recover and consider breaking away from the battlefield. Hong orders the other 3 fighters to escape while he holds Kai in place. They rush through the gateway believing the plan has worked, only to enter another trap. Black energy binds them the instant they arrive on the Eternal side, where Helena and Fanchon are already waiting. The battle immediately splits into separate matchups. Jade engages a red-haired woman and tries to overcome an elemental disadvantage through speed, while her opponent answers with equally powerful attacks. Fire crashes into Jade's ice and both fighters are thrown backward. There is no real pause, however, because every member of the Eternal group has already selected an opponent and the larger ambush is unfolding exactly as planned. Bonsha takes on a blonde riflewoman while the other fighters lock their targets down across the battlefield. One of Bonsha's energy blasts detonates high above them and briefly separates the groups, creating a moment to reset. Fanchon is already dealing with a much stronger opponent. He redirects an incoming attack, only for the enemy to open a full domain and break through his shield. Inside that domain, projected mass energy is suppressed unless the challenger can create a stronger field. The opponent expects that restriction to neutralize Fanchon's techniques and force a close-range fight. Instead, the monk seems almost amused by the demand, because hand-to-hand combat is one area where he needs very little supernatural advantage. Sage Lord Qin appears behind Fanchon and warns that maintaining domain-tier mass energy has already pushed his vessel close to its limit. If Fanchon releases his own domain now, he will have less than a minute before being forced back down. The monk accepts the restriction and tears open his robe, revealing a heavily trained physique that shocks his opponent. One punch sends the domain fighter crashing away before he can adjust. Elsewhere, another blonde domain-tier enemy notices an opening and tries to flee beyond the ice wall. Elder Zeal sees him escaping and prepares to pursue, but Helena calls everyone back. She knows the fugitive is not actually escaping the larger plan at all. Far away in Andromeda, the central base suddenly comes under attack as Luna appears above it in red. The supposedly escaping domain fighter has no idea this strike is part of the same operation. His retreat is interrupted when a ship rises in front of him and fires without warning. He barely dodges the laser and is thrown off course, then recognizes Apex aboard the vessel. Brilliant light surrounds her before the massive machine disappears, revealing that it was only the outer form of her restored true body. The sight leaves the enemy stunned. Apex, once shattered by the gateway, has returned to physical form precisely when the opposing factions believed the mechanical kin princess could no longer intervene. Apex explains that being physically restored feels remarkably good. Her core has been nurtured through an absolute sequence with 100% compatibility, leaving her not only fully repaired but stronger than before. The enemy is shocked that the legendary absolute sequence recorded in Deep Space Archives truly exists and immediately suspects Kai is connected to it. Apex refuses to answer and prepares to kill him. He argues that most mechanical kin have long since developed independent identities after splitting from eternal consciousness and therefore owe the Eternals nothing. The history behind that claim is real. Ancient eternal pioneers once map their consciousness into foreign vessels while pursuing immortality, creating the first mechanical kin. Over 10,000 years, the mechanical kin separated into many branches, but apex states that the royal bloodline preserved the complete spirit of its eternal ancestors. She considers herself an eternal without hesitation. That answer destroys the opponent's hope of persuading her to remain neutral. Apex opens a domain large enough to engulf them both, forcing him to respond with his own. The two fields collide, but Apex's restored power is clearly superior and begins crushing his resistance. Back at the gateway, Kai and Hong are still locked in their own battle. Hong admits he underestimated how quickly Kai adapted after reaching domain tier, and finally understands why the Eternals frightened Andromeda so deeply. In the first place, Hong is already nearing his limit when a message suddenly reaches him. Kai notices, smiles, and withdraws his domain long enough for the enemy to read it. The report confirms that a domain tier Eternal has broken directly into Andromeda and is overwhelming Lady Milo. The attacker is Luna. Milo throws everything she has into the fight, landing several strikes that fail to leave even a scratch. Her repeated blade waves are deflected until one final exchange erupts into a violent explosion and leaves her coughing blood. Luna raises her spear as a massive dragon forms behind her, making it clear that the defenders of Andromeda are now facing the same kind of overwhelming pressure they tried to bring into the nullness expanse. Luna's power keeps rising as Milo tries to protect herself and the planet below with another domain. The defense lasts only moments before Luna's spear shatters it. Milo accumulates wounds while Luna remains untouched. Back at the gateway, Hong realizes his own situation is deteriorating and renews the fight against Kai. Golden light surrounds him as he fires a concentrated wave from his staff, but Kai catches the attack bare-handed and sends it back. A black arrow follows and strikes Hong before Kai closes the distance. Chains appear from one hand to bind him while a conjured hammer forms in the other, turning the final stage of the battle into a relentless combination of ranged and close combat. Hong is forced into another transformation and unleashes the strongest light attack he has left, yet even that cannot break Kai's defense. With no remaining option, he finally accepts defeat. Apex's battle ends almost the same way. Her opponent pushes his domain to its limit, but Apex steadily crushes it with superior mass energy. Desperate, he summons enormous golden guns across the sky. For one final barrage, Apex simply waves her hand and takes control of the weapons. Their color shifts from gold to blue, the barrels rotate, and every cannon turns back toward the man who summoned them. The power he created for his last stand is now aimed directly at himself. The stolen weapons fire and overwhelm their owner, leaving only his broken body after the explosion. Kai then returns through the gateway carrying the unconscious Hong, hovering above the battlefield, where both sides immediately recognize what the sight means. He declares the battle over and relief spreads through the eternal fighters. Even people who expected Kai to win are shaken by seeing Andromeda's sovereign defeated so completely. A nearby commotion briefly breaks the mood. When Boncha is still fighting with an old academy rival and pulling at her hair, Kai separates them and reminds Boncha that after this war, they may never have a reason to meet these enemies again. The larger conflict has already moved beyond personal grudges. The reason becomes clear when Kai recalls the agreement Hong proposed during their fight. Hong admitted his side's chances were poor, but argued that a domain-tier fighter could still cause catastrophic losses if he abandoned all restraint. He offered a single decisive duel instead. If Kai won, Andromeda would cooperate in sealing both gateways connected to the nullness expanse. Kai initially pretended not to understand the reference to two spatial nodes, but Hong had already deduced that a second passage must exist, likely connected to the origin array. Because another domain-tier Eternal had escaped, Hong's proposal was not surrender yet, but it was his final attempt to turn total defeat into a negotiated settlement. Hong promised that if he lost, Andromeda would fully recognize the Eternals and help rebuild their homeland, whether inside the nullness expanse or elsewhere. He even suggested Kai could become the next sovereign as long as the new order remained stable. Kai laughed because neither of them truly had the authority to decide Andromeda's future so easily. He recognized the offer as Hong's attempt to secure a graceful exit. Still, Kai was willing to negotiate under harsher terms.